It's the Smucker's Uncrustables podcast with your host, Uncrustables. Okay, today's guest is rough around the edges. Please welcome Crust.
Thanks for having me.
Today's topic, he's round with soft, pillowy bread.
Hey.
Filled with delicious PB&J.
Are you talking about yourself?
And you can take him anywhere.
Why'd you invite?
And we are out of time.
Are you really cutting me off?
Uncrustables are the best part of the sandwich. Sorry, Crust.
If this were a Reese's TV ad, you'd be staring at a Reese's peanut butter cup. And sure, my voice is peanut buttery smooth, but still, you need to see the peanut butter cups, right? No? I can really just say Reese's and you'll go get some? Okay, Reese's. 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 Really working, actually. Reese's. Reese's. I'm on to something. Reese's. Reese's. Reese's.
The new McCrispy Strip is here. Dip approved by ketchup, tangy barbecue, honey mustard, Sprite, McFlurry, Big Mac sauce, double dipped in buffalo and ranch, more ranch, and creamy chili McCrispy Strip Dip. Now at McDonald's. Ba-da-ba-ba-ba.
Hey, warmer from the low. Welcome to lovely Las Vegas for Coast to Coast Hoops with myself, Craig Hoops Peterson, now part of the Easton Family of Podcasts. We got an excellent podcast for you. In segment number 2, we are going to be joined by Matt Josephs. You know him better as Big Major Matt. We're going to be chatting about the Atlantic 10 and what he's been making out of that conference, a few of the top teams out there in the SEC, some of the volatility that we've been seeing in these conferences, along with some of these undefeated teams that have really been able to rise up in these mid-major leagues as well. So we're going to be taking a look at a little bit of everything with our good friend Matt in segment number 2, including quite a few of the games that we do have for this Wednesday. In the final segment, going to get you guys picks and analysis on every game on the betting board for this college basketball Wednesday as we hit some bank shots. If you do have a question, comment, segment idea, what have you for this podcast, you do have one of two ways we fire those in. First one is my Twitter/X timeline at @GNet_D1. Keep in mind, letters EM, they mean does not matter. Size per usual, please do send these into the timeline. Other way, that's fine. An Apple Podcast review. If you rate this podcast 5 stars, it is very much appreciated. And from there, you're able to fire on whatever you'd like to hear on this podcast via that 5-star review. We did not get in any Twitter/X questions today, but boy, did we have a fun day of college basketball on Tuesday. Now, do note that I am doing this just before all these results do go final because of Greg Peterson experience. That is from 9 to midnight Pacific time. That means that I have to do this a little bit in advance. I'm recording this right around about 7:05 p.m. Pacific time, Eastern time. That is midnight to 3 with regards to the Greg Peterson experience. But let's take a look at everything that we did get from Tuesday. Try to find some trends and try to get to know these teams a little bit better.
Games from yesterday is Greg buzzing about. Here is the rowdy recap.
South Carolina continues to be a moneymaker, and South Carolina continues to be one of the most underrated teams in college basketball. They get the job done once again. They go on the road. They take down Tennessee by a count of 63-59. They've also been a really good team to the under thus far this season. As for South Carolina, they're now 16-5 against the spread. They go just 10 of 29 from three-point range. Dalton Connect, he was able to connect for Tennessee on 3 of 8 three-point shooting, but that means the rest of the team, they went 2 of 13 from distance. For Tennessee, out of their 59 points, 31 of them came via Connect. Nobody else was really able to give you a lot of offense. This despite the fact that Tennessee had only 6 turnovers in this game. South Carolina did a great job of just handling this game, and Talon Cooper, how about him? 18 points, 5 rebounds, goes 4 of 5 from three-point range, was able to run things very efficiently for South Carolina. They get a massive win. Villanova, it just continues to be the pit of misery for them, as it is a Villanova squad that is very much free-falling. I believe that they have now lost 4 straight games. That includes 2 losses to Marquette along the way, 85-80. Marquette gets it done as Marquette goes 10 of 22 from three-point range. Now, you did have TJ Bamba for Villanova chip in there 24 along with Eric Dixon, but his team just could not guard the arc all night long. Marquette was able to win the rebound battle 37-34 as you were able to get 32 points, 9 assists, 6 rebounds out of Tyler Kolek, and then Stevie Mitchell was able to chip in there 9 boards of his own. It's a Marquette team that has been quite a bit better on defense this season, but they showed their offensive prowess here. It has been a Villanova team that just all throughout the season, in my opinion, they've just been a little bit disappointing. And for Villanova, they're below 500 against the spread thus far this season, and that was another rough one. For Iowa State, man, things are just not looking too tremendous for this team. I believe that they have now lost 4 out of their last 6 games as as Illinois gets on the road and they pounce on Ohio State. 87-75, the final for Terrence Shannon. 23 points. He was the top scorer for the team, but Ty Rogers, a nice double-double with 13 points, 10 rebounds. Illinois was a rebound battle, 36-28. Both of these teams had just 6 turnovers in this game, and Roddy Gale was able to chip in their 20 points, but for Ohio State, they go just 4 of 12 from three-point range. They lose the battle with regards to offensive rebounds, and Illinois, 18 out of 20 at the free throw line. So they were able to do a nice job of being able to execute, and for Ohio State, just continues to be rough for them. TCU, they've been able to rise up. They win by a count of 85-78, and Texas Tech, they went 14 of 28 from 3. TCU, they went 11 of 20 from distance. So both of these teams were absolutely smoldering from distance, but for TCU, guy that was able to really put them over the top, how about Trey Tennyson? 23 points, 4 of 8 3-point shooting. And Micah Peavy, by the way, went 4 of 4 from distance. For Texas Tech, Pappas Isaacs did all of that he could. 25 points, 9 assists on this night. Both of these teams were just bearing shots. And the real difference maker in this one, TCU, just 9 turnovers. Texas Tech, 13 turnovers. And TCU now 13-8 against the spread thus far this season. Another team has been pretty rock solid at being able to cover some games for you. How about the Flyers of Dayton? They win and they cover against George Washington by a count of 83-61. And for Dayton, I believe the last time they gave up north of 70 points was when they were in the Charleston Classic. For George Washington, they go just 4 of 29 from three-point range. Meanwhile, Dayton, 12 of 24 from the outside. Davron Holmes, he did a solid job with 25 points, 12 rebounds. For Dayton, they're able to win that rebound battle 39-37. They do a solid job, Dayton does, turning the ball over just 8 times. They just continue to keep it rocking and rolling, though I will say best team in the conference in terms of covering. We're actually going to be seeing them on Wednesday. Richmond at 15-4-1 against the spread. Also out there in the Atlantic 10, VCU has been a relatively solid cover team going into Tuesday, 11-7-2 against the spread, and it looked like they were going to be able to get a cruiser of a win on Tuesday. They were up 20 points against St. Bonaventure with there being seconds left in the first half. St. Bonaventure makes a run towards back half of the first half, and they steal this game 67-62. VCU just completely hits the skids at the back half of the game. For VCU, they lose the turnover battle 13-9, but more importantly, they lose a rebound battle 43-30. St. Bonaventure wins from within. Chad Venning along Charles Pride, they combine for 18 rebounds in this one. And then off the bench, you had Daryl Banks III, who was able to supply the team with 15 points. Micah Adams-Woods, 13 points. Both of these guys want to combine 3 of 10 from three-point range as the Bonnies as a whole. They go just 4 of 25 from three-point range, but they're able to get the job done. They're able to get some very, very big wins, and they were able to get a cover as well. This was a closing line of 4.5, so absolutely massive there. We always get a lot of action on Tuesday as well, and for Northern Illinois, well, action has not been too kind to them as they are unable to cover against Central Michigan, 84-77. Game goes to overtime. Central Michigan gets it done. Northern Illinois, they are unable to cover the 3.5, so they are now 5-12 against the spread. And for Northern Illinois, they just weren't able to get the ball in there from three-point range, 7-26 from distance. You did have a good performance of 23 points out of Zarik Nutter, and then you had along with that, Xavier Amos be able to chip in their 25 points, but for Central Michigan, they go 26 of 37 at the free throw line. Brian Taylor was able to give you 13 points, 12 rebounds. Central Michigan able to win that rebound battle 44-41, and they're able to get this one. Your top cover teams out there in the MAC, by the way, Miami of Ohio and Ball State. They are both now 12-7 against the spread. We saw both in action on Tuesday. For Ball State, they end up falling to Bowling Green, who's really been surging, by the way. 81-72, the final. Bowling Green, they go 8 of 16 from three-point range. Ball State, they go themselves 6 of 14 from distance, but for Bowling Green, they had 28 points, 6 boards out of Marcus Hill. That allows them to be able to get it done. Meanwhile, for Miami of Ohio, they go on the road. They get a win as a underdog, 71-67 against Kent State. A Kent State team has been quite disappointing themselves, 7-12 against the spread. Rishi Hunter was able to chip in their 20 points for Miami of Ohio. They owe Kent State to 31% shooting from the floor, so that was rather ghastly for them. In terms of other top 25 teams that were in action on Tuesday, many of these teams are still playing it out. This game has already won final, though, and this one goes the way of Georgia Tech. 74-73. They're able to take it to a North Carolina team that has been relatively solid all season long, and we saw big-time movement on this game. Opener was 11, closes more around 8.5, And for this North Carolina team, they just haven't been getting a ton out of Armando Bacot recently. It's been more Harris and Ingram down low. Ingram was able to give you 13 rebounds in this one. Bacot, 9 points, 9 rebounds. RJ Davis did his best with 28 points, but North Carolina goes just 8 of 28 from three-point range. Meanwhile, Georgia Tech, 9 of 20 from three-point range, and you've been able to have Nathan George really step up for the team. 16 points, 4 assists, and then Kyle Sturvin off the bench. He was able to supply the team with 18 points. North Carolina now 13-8 against the spread thus far this season, by the way. We saw a lot of ACC action, including my DK Network Rhode pick, be able to come through for us as I decided to lay the points with Boston College. They close anywhere between 4 to 4.5 point favorites. They win this game by 5, 80-75 the final. Got a little bit hairy down there at the end with the late game felling, but for Boston College, they overcome the fact that they get completely trounced in the turnover battle, 21-11 by shooting 10 of 20 from three-point range. Meanwhile, Syracuse, 8 of 23 from the outside. J.J. Starlin, Judah Mintz, they both provided 18 points to Syracuse, but for Boston College, Quentin Post, despite his 7 turnovers, still was able to supply the team with 12 rebounds. That was impactful for Boston College. They win that rebound battle 37-27, and for Syracuse, this has been a team that has been a little bit rough in terms of covering spreads, down to 9-12 against the spread overall, and that was a big, giant win for Boston College in our DK Network write-ups. Right now, you've got Louisville currently trailing Clemson 34-22, beginning part of the second half there. Louisville has been 8-11-1 against the spread thus far this season. Not looking like that might be improving in this one. NC State currently in a slog against Miami as well, 33-29 at the half. So we shall see what happens in the second half there. I'll have some cleanup to do on the podcast tomorrow. And then if you're looking at the Big 12, it has been so fascinating to see what we've been getting out of Kansas State this far this season. They have been very much an under team this far this season. This one is trending towards another under, as right now you've got Oklahoma up 63-45 with about 4 minutes remaining, closing total of 140.5. It's been an Oklahoma team that has been pretty rock solid all season long. Jalen Moore and Ty Perry both have 21 points apiece as I'm recording this, but for Kansas State, 4 of 27 from three-point range. Meanwhile, Oklahoma has won 20 of 35 at the free throw line. Looks like it's going to go their way, but man, that was rather harebrained and crazy. This is already a game that's won over the total. Mississippi State, Ole Miss with about 6 minutes remaining in the second half. It's 71-69 as both of these teams are just sinking shots. For Ole Miss, they're 9-24 from three-point range, 7-16 from distance. For Mississippi State with Josh Hubbard, he's been able to supply 19 points. Meanwhile, for Ole Miss, you've got 3 separate guys who have been able to supply 15-plus points already in this one. Looking like this one might not be going the way of Oklahoma State. They're currently down to Kansas, 46-26, but what's been really big for this Kansas team, the way that they've been able to get Johnny Furphy to be able to step up. He had 8 first-half points, and he's been on a nice burner run that's giving them just a little bit more, along with that big 3 of Hunter Dickinson, DeJuan Harris, along with Kevin McCullough. That's been absolutely massive for them, and McCullough did not play in this game as far as I am seeing, unless if there's something that was unbeknownst to me, but for Kansas, absolutely massive what they've been able to get out of him. You had DePaul in the first half just put up a complete turd of a performance. They were down at the half 31-18 to Seton Hall. As I record this, it's 37-18. Right now for DePaul, it's just all sorts of sad. Meanwhile, Michigan State in a dogfight against Michigan, 44-39. Beginning parts of the second half there has been a less than savory run for Michigan, but this has also been a Michigan State team that has been rudderless and strange to say the least thus far this season as well. And we had a few West Coast games that we'll need to polish up on the podcast tomorrow as well. But if you're looking trend-wise at what we are currently getting in college basketball, it has actually been quite a few unders over the last 7 days, as in the last 7 days, the unders are hitting at 53%, 174 unders to 154 overs. Home underdogs, they're having a rough time of it, 54-60-1 against the spread. Meanwhile, if you're looking at home teams overall, they're hitting at about 48.3% against the spread. If you're looking at the entirety of the college basketball season, home underdogs hitting at just 49.1%, 445, 461, and 16. Meanwhile, the over rate still at 51.4%, 1,756 to 1,659 under. So that's what we're seeing in college basketball right now, and that's what we all got on Tuesday. Now, we're going to talk to our good friend Mid-Major Matt, aka Matt Joseph, a little bit about the Atlantic 10, a little bit about what we've been seeing in conference play, and a little bit on these Wednesday games next, right here on Coast to Coast Seats with myself, Greg Peterson, now a part of the Beeson Family Podcast. If you're loving Las Vegas, for Coast to Coast Seats with myself, Greg Peterson, now part of the Beeson Family Podcast. it is always great to be joined by this man. As Matt Josephs, you know him better as Mid-Major Matt. He does such excellent work taking a look at this great game that we all know and love of college basketball. I know he is hard at work taking a look at all 362 Division I teams, everyone from the mid-majors all the way up to the top of the top. He does a great job of being able to cover it all, and you're able to follow him on Twitter /X and Mid-Major Matt all together, and you're able to catch his work over in ESPN Radio's affiliate station in Richmond, doing the show Border to Border, FTN Network, and so much more. And Matt, always great to have you aboard. Thank you.
Always great to be joining you.
We've got ourselves just an interesting landscape in college basketball right now. And what have you been making out of the first month or so of conference play? Because we have been noticing that home underdogs just have not been the same this year as they have been in past years. I'm not sure what has been up with that, but we've been noticing home underdogs just have not been hitting the same way that they have in the past. And it just feels like we have gotten more outliers with these top teams than I can ever really imagine, I can ever really remember.
Yeah, it's pretty interesting because that used to be one of those bets that you always took a look at, was the home underdog in that sort of situation. But I also think we're seeing, it feels like a lot more undefeated teams this far into conference play, and especially in the smaller conferences where you see a McNeese State at 7-0, and you see a Vermont at 6-0, and an Eastern Kentucky at 7-0, and there's Carolina in the ACC who's 9-0. So I feel like we're starting to see like some of the best teams, and some of them have not lost yet in conference play, and usually we do see around one loss or so this far into conference play.
Yeah, it has been really interesting to take a look at some of those undefeated teams, and I do feel like in some of these conferences there is a pretty big divide between the haves and the have-nots as well. Like the SEC is really coming to the forefront on Tuesday and Wednesday, and I feel like in the SEC you've really been able to form a nice big four, despite the fact that Auburn took a few losses. I like what I'm seeing out of them. Alabama, Tennessee, and then obviously Kentucky, and then you've got sort of a best of the rest. What have you been making out of that conference? Because it is going to be a conference that we see quite a bit of on Wednesday, and I think that there are some teams that can certainly compete on the level of Final Four. Meanwhile, you've got some of these disappointments like Florida and Missouri that just have not been living up to their billing.
Yeah, you keep waiting for the Muss Bus to get its wheels back in place, and then fortunately for Arkansas, you just spoke about the home underdog situation. Arkansas has had several tough teams at home, and it just hasn't worked out for them. We're used to Vanderbilt being towards the bottom of the standings, and seeing Missouri at 0-7 with how the season kind of began is rather interesting. But yeah, when you look at the top, it's Kentucky, who plays really well at home. They've had some poor performances on the road, and then Tennessee, which really performs well in the regular season before they get to the NCAA tournament, and of course Alabama, who runs such a fast pace and has so much raw talent that it's interesting to see this SEC with some of the teams that are really good and some of the teams that are really bad.
Yep, and I'm going to be very fascinated to see what we're going to be getting out of some of those teams on Wednesday. As joining me on the show, we do have Matt Josephs, better known as Mid-Major Matt, right here on Coast to Coast Hoops. And I do want to ask you about that Florida versus Kentucky game. As we are doing this, we're not sure what that opening line is going to be, but last time these two teams played, Kentucky, they went on the road, they were able to get the job done, and they were able to get the win there. And for Kentucky, they do get reinforcements from that last time around as well, with the man that they are calling Big Z coming in. Hasn't necessarily had a ton of production ever since that first game against Georgia. But what do you make out of a Kentucky team that really turned over a new leaf this year with regards to their offense, but is leaving a little bit of something to be desired on the defensive side of things?
Well, and I think it's interesting how they won that Arkansas game. It was a 63-57 game. And when you look at the rest of their scores, somebody's usually getting to the 80s, whether it's the Wildcats or their opponent. But to win a game like that, 63-57 on the road, especially after how poorly they played against South Carolina, that tells you something. And of course, the one thing I do know about this game is even though we don't have the numbers, the total is going to be like in the 170s probably, because both teams play really fast. Neither team forces any turnovers, it feels like, for the most part, especially in SEC play. So both teams are going to be able to run their offense. And certainly Kentucky feels so much better at home. 105-96 against Georgia, 90-77 against Mississippi State. Same score against Missouri at home. Those were their last three conference home games. So we know that points will be scored in plenty of bunches in this one.
Yep, absolutely. It has been so interesting to watch a rise in Kentucky totals this season. The team is playing quite fast, and what really stands out to me about them as well is not only do they play fast, but they don't turn the ball over as well, which I think has been the most striking part of what they've been able to do this far this season. So that is going to be a big game that we're going to be seeing on Wednesday. As Matt, I know that you do a great job of taking a look at the Atlantic 10, and we're going to get the random Chicago State versus Duquesne game, which that might have some very interesting betting implications, to say the least. But the game that I think is going to be so interesting out there in the Atlantic 10 for Wednesday is this George Mason versus St. Joe's game. I have to think that St. Joe's is going to be a slight favorite with them being at home. But what do you make out of these two teams in an Atlantic 10 where I think that there was a lot of hope that perhaps a team not named Dayton was going to be able to come to the forefront, was going to be able to step up and perhaps put themselves in that large competition. But that said, it just feels like right now the Atlantic 10, if Dayton is able to win that conference tournament, they might be doomed to one bid because it feels like they're going to have a bunch of teams that are sitting there in like the net rankings of like 60, 70, 80, but not really that top 50 team other than Dayton.
Yeah, and you look at George Mason, they have the 11-2 out-of-conference schedule, but they beat nobody pretty much. They lost their toughest games, and then they start conference play, and they lose 3 in a row to VCU, Richmond, and George Washington. But the key to me here is this. George Mason, 40% of the shots by opponents are from three-point land. St. Joe, 47% of their shots are from three-point land. So you tell me how many three-pointers are St. Joe's making in this one, and if they're making a lot, they're going to win this game rather easily, and if they're not, then this is going to be a very tight game. George Mason struggles a little bit defensively against the 3. They are 10th in the country defending the 2, but they're 260th defending the 3. So to me, if St. Joe can find their distance and find their long-range shots, they win this game rather easily. And if they're ice cold, then George Mason's probably the play in this one.
Yeah, and with St. Joe's, this has been such an interesting team with the way that they were able to dominate in the old Philly 5 matchups. They were able to take Kentucky to overtime, and that's a loss at home to Texas A&M Commerce this year. So that's the way that things have been going for some of these A-10 teams. As joining me on the show, we do have Matt Josephs, better known as Mid-Major Matt, joining me right here on Coast to Coast, saying, I do want to talk about this team as well, because I do know that you do some work over there with Richmond. As a matter of fact, I think that you actually do a little bit of the pre- and post-game coverage for the old Richmond Spiders, and they're right now atop the Atlantic 10. They are 7-0. They are going to be taking on Fordham on Wednesday. Just what have you identified with this team? Because coming into the year, they were a team that didn't necessarily come in with a bunch of fanfare. You thought that they might be pesky, but perhaps they would be towards like the more of the middle part of the conference. And Chris Mooney, in my opinion, has done one of the better coaching jobs in all of college basketball this year.
Yeah, he's assembled the SoCon All-Stars. I mean, Jordan King, Isaiah Bigelow, Jason Roach, and Tyler Harris, who were SoCon superstars on their respective teams, they're now all on the same roster. And it's not a bad mid-major conference to get your stars from and to get your players from. I mean, Jordan King was good with East Tennessee State. He's been tremendous with the Richmond Spiders, but this is the nastiest of sandwiches you could ever have if you're Richmond. You come off a sold-out crowd, a tremendous win against Dayton, a great atmosphere. You're heading to Fordham to take on the Rams in what will be a less than stellar atmosphere. And then you've got the round 1 with your crosstown rival VCU on the road in the Siegel Center on Saturday. Past Richmond teams would have failed this test miserably. They would have failed this test and would get blasted by Fordham. I think this is the type of thing where I'm looking Fordham first half. I'm looking at Fordham to kind of punch him in the mouth, and then maybe we get a solid Richmond line at halftime. I think Richmond's the type of team that could struggle at least early on. We saw them go down 9-0 to Dayton in that game and then kind of fight their way back. They've been sometimes prone to some of these slow starts in the first half. So I think I'm looking Fordham first half in this game and then come back upon Richmond at halftime, depending upon what the score is. But if they can pass this test, then, man, you don't see a lot of losses the rest of the season, because the one question mark was, can they win on the road? You know, they won that game at Loyola Chicago by 2. They won at Duquesne by 2 without Day Grant, and then they go to Davidson, a team they've dominated on the road. They win that game in overtime. They've answered a lot of the questions so far. So if they beat Fordham, who knows what happens in that VCU game? But Richmond could be a number 1 seed entering that tournament, which means they get at least an NIT bid for March.
And I think that it's so interesting that you do mention Duquesne as well, and I do want to talk about them just a little bit because they do have that random game that is going to be going down against Chicago State, but they've really been the big disappointment in the conference. They started out 0-5. Now they're starting to find their sea legs just a little bit more. But that said, what have you made out of a Duquesne team that I just watch them and I wonder what they do really well, because they do have Day Grant. They do also have out there in the backcourt Jimmy Clark III. But past those two guys, they just really don't have too much, and they're just a little bit of a head-scratching team to me.
Yeah, and it's one of those things where they've had injury issues. Obviously, Savrasov is out and has been out, and then one of the Drames has not played. So they've had some injury issues, and we talked about Day Grant was out. He had some concussion symptoms, missed a couple of games. But if you look, their offensive numbers are just bad, especially in conference play. They're not shooting well. They're not making their free throws. They're playing good defense. They're number 1 in forcing turnovers during A-10 play, and they're number 1 defending the 3. They just don't have this consistency in the lineup. And, you know, it's nice to see a guy like Jake DeMichael come in and play play well, and he's been pretty good, and they've bounced back in these last 2 home games. I'll be interested to see. I mean, Chicago State is not as bad as we thought they'd be, and this is one of those random spots for this game, and you look at what Chicago State has done. They won at Stetson, they won at Fairleigh Dickinson, they lost by 5 at UTEP, they lost by 19 at Oklahoma State, lose by 7 at Kansas State. If you're not in the right frame of mind to play this game, Chicago State could cover and potentially win. So if we get a 12 or 13, I mean, Ken Prom has it at 14, I probably might look at Chicago State, especially because Duquesne feels like one of those teams that may not necessarily be 100% focused for this game.
Yep, and with Chicago State, they play a really slow and grimy style as well, which has really been standing out to me, and it's been working to success for them. So I do think that we've got a lot of intrigue with regards to those Atlantic 10 teams that are going to be playing on Wednesday. As joining me on the show, we do have Mid-Major Matt, a.k.a. Matt Josephs, right here on Coast to Coast Hoops. And then when it comes to Wednesday, we did cover a lot of the SEC as well, but I do want to get your thoughts on this game as well. It's going to be the Baylor versus Central Florida game. Central Florida, as we know, they have quite successfully been able to make the move on from the Atlantic 10 to the Big 12. They've been able to pull off some nice upsets. Now they have to play against a Baylor team that they lose that triple overtime game against TCU. Baylor has been really good from three-point range. Central Florida has just been locked down with regards to their defense. What do you make out of a situation like this and a Baylor team coming off of a triple overtime heartbreaker?
Yeah, and it's so funny. You look at UCF and they're 3-4 in conference, and you're like, okay, that's pretty good. And, they've defended home court pretty well. They beat Kansas at home. They beat West Virginia at home. The Baylor game, BYU game was really close. And then you look at their conference numbers. They're shooting 39.6% from 2, 28.7% from 3. They're turning the ball over in 20% of their possessions in conference play. And you're like, how the hell did they win any game so far? And then you look at Baylor, and you mentioned it, the triple overtime game. They lose in overtime at Kansas State. They lose by 2 at Texas. It feels like they're either really close to falling off a little bit, or they're really close to blowing somebody out. Their offense hasn't exactly been great either. For those who follow KenPom, a lot of their conference statistics are very red. So I think it'll be interesting here. Obviously, UCF is tough at home, but Baylor seems to be due. The 3 road games in 4 stretch is really tough. Certainly with different atmospheres and things like that, going from Texas back home, and then now you're going to UCF. So that's rather interesting. I feel like we're getting close to a Baylor breakout here. That offense is too good for them to be as down as they have been the last couple of games.
Yeah, with Baylor, it has been a bunch that has been really struggling from three-point range in conference, shooting darn near 30% from three-point range in the Big 12. So we shall see if they're going to be able to pick it up as well. And Matt, is there anything else that you're going to be taking a look at the next few days, whether that be a game for Wednesday, a game for Thursday, or just perhaps a team in general that has been a little bit head-scratching, a little bit strange for you that you want to see a little bit more from moving forward?
Well, I got to point this out first. There is a team that I've been touting on my Twitter account, at Mid-Major Matt, that I'm kind of stunned. And obviously, college basketball. So when I say one of the best offenses in college basketball, we all think Indiana State. And Indiana State has 5 guys who average double digits. They all can shoot the 3. Josh Schertz has that thing running like a machine. And you look at a sports book online, and I got them at 95-1 to make the Final Four. Now, look, obviously, we have no idea what the draw is. We have no idea what the bracket is. But I could certainly see a scenario where Indiana State becomes, a 10, an 11, a 12, whatever. They get the right 5, they get the right 4, and a 1 goes down, things happen. You look at the other teams that were kind of in that mix, like Rutgers and UCF and Grand Canyon and UCLA and Penn State. Like, you look at the teams that they're paired up with, and you're like, well, wait a second. That's really interesting because they're way better than a lot of these teams. And I'll be interested to see on Wednesday, because on Wednesday, they'll be playing at Belmont. And we know Belmont's got a really good offense, although they play no defense whatsoever. So this should be a game where Indiana State should be able to flex their muscles even on the road. But I'm just perplexed at the market value that you can get on an Indiana State team that shoots so well. And we've seen Loyola Chicago do it. And we've seen, obviously, some of these other schools make these runs. Florida Atlantic made that run last year. To me, Indiana State fits the profile as a team who can make a run. Now, obviously, look, they can lose to the 5. They can lose to whoever in the first round. But at 95-1, now 85-1, I think Indiana State to make the Final Four is certainly a wager worth a sprinkle of a bet. Not a full unit, not like a large chunk of your bankroll, but to put a sprinkle on one of the best offenses in America to go to the Final Four at 85-1, that to me seems really good.
Yeah, Indiana State has been so much fun to watch this year. Robbie Avila is someone that stands right around about 6'10", 6'11". He's able to do a little bit of everything. I know that some people have called him the Nikola Jokic of college basketball. That is going to be a tremendous game that we're going to be seeing on Wednesday with, like you said, Belmont and Indiana State, 2 teams that are all gas but no brakes, and a man that is always chugging forward, a man that does a tremendous job. Just taking a look at this great game is you, Matt. You do an incredible job on so many different fronts over there at FTN Network, ESPN Radio out there in Richmond, and so much more. So let the good people at home know it's all on tap for you and how people can follow along on social media and other platforms.
Yeah, follow me on Twitter at MidMajorMatt. Always posting information whenever I find it. Certainly trying to post some winners as well on FTNNetwork.com. And as I always say, we all have the same goal. We're all trying to beat the books at the same time. And then also, spring training's getting set to come close. And so that means K-props and all sorts of fun stuff. I'm really excited for the baseball season ahead.
Absolutely. That is going to be a fun season. Once we get through college basketball, it's straight into baseball season. Matt does a great job of always turning the page there. And Matt, whenever he joins the show, he lends such good insight. So big thanks to Matt Josephs, a.k.a. Mid-Major Matt, for joining me on Coast to Coast Hoops, now part of the VSiN Family Podcast. And coming up next, it is that time of the podcast. I give you picks and analysis on every game on the betting board for this college basketball Wednesday as we hit some big shots. And we're back here in lovely Las Vegas for Coast to Coast Hoops with myself, Craig Hoops-Peterson, now part of the VSiN Family Podcast. Always great to be joined by Matt Josephs, better known as Mid-Major Matt. He does such great work taking a look at this game that we all know and love of college basketball. Coupled with that, I know that he's doing a great job on the football front. I know that he is getting set for what is going to be a tremendous baseball season, which once the college basketball season gets done, there's no rest for me, as baseball always needs to be handicapped as well. He does a great job on that front, and every single time Matt joins this podcast, he always lends great insight. So big thanks to Matt for joining me in the last segment. Now it is that time of the podcast. I give you picks and analysis on every game on the betting board for this college basketball Wednesday as we hit some bank shots.
Most financial establishments close at a certain time, but not here. It is time for a side and total on every game on today's betting board bank shots.
Do note that, as per usual, any changes that are made to these plays will be listed up on my Twitter/X feed at Junit_81, and we're going to be going in Las Vegas rotation order. This is where we go with the games with 3 digits on the rotation first, and then the extra games are going to be at the bottom. The conferences are involved in the extra games. Mainly today is the Big South, the America East, along with the Patriot League. Throw in there the Atlantic Sun as well. I believe that there might be 1 or 2 Southland games down there as well. And if we would have any independents, that would be Chicago State. That'll be at the bottom as well. I believe they are playing Duquesne, so you're going to be getting that in the extra games board as well. So how about if we get things started with 665, 666 on the betting board? It is UNC Greensboro, and they are going to be hitting the road. They're going to be facing off against VMI. VMI finds themselves as a 16.5 point home underdog, and your total on this game, it is 148. Set my line at 17. I am not willing to lay a half a point more than 16.5, but I'm going to be willing to lay the 16.5. Sadly, with VMI, they're actually giving up fewer points per possession this year than they did a season ago, but that just speaks to the stinkitude that we have been seeing out of VMI this season. They have given up 100-plus points already twice this month. I actually think 3 times this month. They are giving up the arc at home. Opponents are shooting north of 40% from three-point range in their home games, and they go up against a UNC Greensboro team that is really going to get going. This team was rough with regards to their defense towards the beginning part of the season. They were outside the top 175 in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis towards the early part of January, but things have really picked up for them. They have now allowed 70 points or fewer in 4 of their last 5 games. Lone exception was that overtime game that they played against Western Carolina, which in regulation they allowed 70 points in. So last time they gave up north of 70 points in regulation was against Samford, which that's a Samford team that's playing at warp speed. You've got Mikhail Brown-Jones, who's giving you 21 points, 8 boards, and is currently shooting 51.5% from 3. I'm sorry, I think that there's going to be a little bit of regression on that front, but I mean, this is a team that as a whole, they are shooting 39% from 3-point range. That is a top 20 mark in all of college basketball. Going up against a VMI team that's not terrible with regards to their 3-point shooting, you got Brendan Watkins, who's been able to supply the team with 15.5 points, 3 assists per contest. That said, this is a bunch that they are turning the ball over 16.2 times per contest. That is, in terms of turnovers per possession, a bottom 15 mark in all of college basketball. You have to go up against a Greensboro team that they really do travel with regards to their three-point shooting percentage as well. This is a Greensboro team that in a road/shoot-record environment, they're still shooting about 35.5% from distance. Down low, you do have Tight Shot Jackson, who has been able to give this VMI team right around 10 rebounds per game, but this team is still well outside the top 200 with regards to rebound rate. Greensboro has really nobody other than Brown Jones, who's been able to do a solid job of being able to give you north of 6 rebounds per game, but all in all, it is still a team that is holding their own on glass in terms of the UNC Greensboro rebound rate. It is right around about 217th in all of college basketball. That should trump a VMI bunch, despite the fact that they might have the best rebounder in this game, 261st, and at home they've been really ghastly with regards to their rebounding as well. VMI in terms of home rebound rate is in the bottom 30 in all of college basketball. Greensboro really bulking up with regards to their defense, starting to cut down on giving up three-point shots. Well, VMI has given up 100-plus points in 3 out of their last 5 games. I think that this is going to be a rough one for VMI. I did set my total at a 149 because I think that Greensboro can easily go off for 85-plus in this one. Offense has really gotten cooking for them, 82-plus points in 2 out of their last 3 games. And for VMI, just right now, completely ghastly with regards to home defense. So, looking at this total over, set my total at 149 and want to lay up to 16.5 with Greensboro. 667, 668 on the betting board. Northwestern hits the road face-off against Purdue, and Purdue does find themselves as a 12.5 to a 13-point favorite. And your total on this game, it is 143 to 143.5. Set Purdue is a 15.5 point favorite. I'm going to be willing to lay this number. It has been a Northwestern team that has played a little bit better recently, but I still do have my question marks when it comes to this Northwestern team. They have fallen outside the top 100 in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. Now, to their credit, they do a nice job of being able to take care of the ball. A top 15 team in all of college basketball with regards to turnovers on a per possession basis. You've got Boo Buie, who's been able to give you about 36.5% three-point shooting, 18.5 points, 5.3 assists per contest. Brooks Barnheiser, 14.5 points, 6.5 boards per contest, but he's the only guy in the roster that gives you north of 6 rebounds per game. Northwestern, well outside the top 200 with regards to rebound rate against a Purdue team that over the last 2 years, they've been a top 5 rebound rate team in all of college basketball. Zach Edey leading the way, 23.5 points, 11.5 boards, and this is a Purdue team that you take a look at what they were able to do last year on defense, and it has fallen off just a little bit with regards to giving up a little bit more from beyond the arc, but this is a team that on offense, they're just so beastly. 6th in the country in terms of three-point shooting percentage. Shooting at home, 43.7% from the outside. Braden Smith, I think, was left off the Bob Cousy Award watch list for the top 10. That's a crying shame. This guy has been amazing. 7 assists, 12 points per contest, shooting 44% from three-point range as a floor general of an offense that ranks 4th in the country in terms of points scored on a per possession basis. And as a matter of fact, you take a look at this Purdue team. Among all players that have made at least one three-pointer thus far this season, all but one of them, in terms of guys that are averaging north of 3 points per contest, are shooting at least 42% from three-point range. The lone exception is Lance Jones, who's shooting about 34% from 3, contributing about a steal and a half per contest. For Northwestern, they just don't have enough down low. I like what Ty Berry is able to bring to the table, and for this Northwestern team, give them a little bit of credit. They've been able to do a solid job of being able to get to 70 on the regular, and this is a Northwestern team that took down Purdue when these two teams played in very early December. That was a 92-88 game in which it looked like Purdue was going to be able to run away and hide with Northwestern. They were able to respond back in overtime and double overtime. I don't see lightning striking twice in that game. Purdue shot 5 of 19 from three-point range. Northwestern 10 of 20 from 3. I think that Purdue gets their revenge. I do think that they get their revenge in a big way, and this is a Purdue team that has also given up 70 points or fewer in 4 of their last 5 games, but I think that the Purdue offense does more than enough to be able to get this total over. Semi-total 145.5, so looking at that over, and with Purdue, going to be willing to lay up to 15 points with them. 669, 670 on the betting board. St. John sits the road face-off against Xavier. The X-Men do find themselves as a favorite of a point. Total on this game, it is 155. It sets Xavier as a favorite of 2.5 points. So, going to be willing to lay the 1 with St. John's. It does still feel like this team is trying to find its identity just a little bit, and I like what Joel Soriano is able to provide down low, and he and Chris Ledlum, as a matter of fact, are a duo that's combining for just under 18 rebounds per game, but the Xavier team has been able to do a better job defensively when they're not facing off against UConn. Against UConn, well, that was rough to say the least, but this has still been an improved defensive team from what they were a season ago, and this is a Xavier team that they really do feast off of their home crowd. Overall for the season, Xavier only about 133rd in the country in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, but you look at how different this offense has been playing at home. They are generating about 12.3 points more per 100 possessions at home rather than in a road/neutral court environment. Fall off has been quite big for Xavier with regards to their three-point shooting. Last year, 39% from distance. This year, 35%, but that does ascend to right around about 36.5% when they are at home. And they're facing off against the St. John's team that has Dennis Jenkins, who's been able to give you north of 5.5 assists per contest. He's been pretty solid with that regard, but for St. John's, this is a different team when they are away from home as well. St. John's always feels like they feast off of their home crowd as well. This is a St. John's team that overall is 71st in the country in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. That said, this is a bunch that's giving up 16.7 points more per 100 possessions in a road/neutral court environment rather than at home. And this is a St. John's team that has been having some difficulties with regards to their offense as well. 72 points or fewer scored in 3 out of their last 4 games. Actually, 72 points or fewer in all 4 of their last 4 games, as they've gotten to 70 or fewer in 3 of those games. For Xavier, it has been a team that, other than that game against UConn, they have been a pretty good constant with regards to their offense. They've gotten to at least 75 points in 5 out of their last 6 games. They've been able to get Quincy Oliveri, Desmond Claude going for a combined about 34 points per contest. You've got Oliveri shooting 44% from 3-point range, and then you've been able to get good versatility out of Gaitis Namiska, who's been able to give you only about 6.5 points per contest, but at 6'7", he does shoot nearly 44% from 3-point range, chips in their 5 rebounds. Abdul Usmain is a good rim protector as well. Going up against the St. John's team that's had RJ Louise being in and out of the fold, it feels like Jordan Dingle hasn't necessarily found his role with regards to this offense as well, so this is a circumstance where I'm going to be willing to take Xavier on the short line. I do think that they got a little bit of a wake-up call against UConn a few days ago, and I think that they're going to respond to it. And while I do think that this is going to be a rather high-scoring game, I think we've went a little bit too far, especially with St. John's having a little bit of a rut with regards to their offense recently. Set my total 154.5, so here at the 155, looking under, and willing to lay up to 2 points with Xavier. 671, 672 on the betting board. Alabama, it's a road face-off against Georgia. Uga is an underdog of between 5 and 6 points. Total on this game, 165 to 165.5. Did set my total at 163. I'm going to be looking at the under. Alabama has been a top 5 team all season long with regards to their points scored on a per possession basis. No question about it. They have been able to do a very nice job of being able to get that rolling, while the defense, it is starting to pick it up a little bit for an Alabama team that, while they play fast, it's not like they play super duper warp speed. And by super duper warp speed, I mean they're about 44th in the country in terms of total possessions per game. Most of the time, you'd think someone like this would be more in that top 15, top 20 range. So it's still really fast. It's just not like, I guess, Citadel level fast from a few seasons ago. Meanwhile, this is a Georgia team that has Noah Thomason, Jabari Abdul-Rahim combining for about 25 points per contest. They shoot it relatively well from 3-point range at about 35%. And part of the reason why I do think that this total is, for one, good to be going under, and 2, I do think that Georgia is going to be able to hold in there and be able to cover this number, is that Georgia has been able to do a really good job with regards to their perimeter defense. This is a squad that does rank in the top 75 with regards to opponents' 3-point shooting percentage, while Alabama certainly has been giving up the arc when they have been away from home. Alabama lost opponents to shoot 35% from 3-point range away from home. That shrinks to about 29.2% when they're at home. Meanwhile, this is a Georgia team that's 71st in the country with regards to opponents' 3-point shooting percentage. Opponents shoot 29.8% from 3-point range at home against them. And when it comes to this Georgia team, they don't necessarily have a ton down low other than Russell Chewa, who's able to give you 7 rebounds per game, going up against an Alabama team that, while they are a pretty solid team with regards to their rebound rate, 22nd in all of college basketball, you really don't have anyone other than Grant Nelson that gives you about 5 to 5.5 rebounds per game. You've had Mark Sears just be a tremendous scorer for this team, 20 points per contest, one of the best pure shooters that you're going to find in all of college basketball. And for Alabama, this has been a team that just has been a very nice constant with regards to their offense. For Alabama, they have been able to get to at least 74 points in all but one of their games thus far this month. But you do take a look at this Alabama team as well, and they've been playing a little bit better with their defense. They've given up 75 points or fewer, which I know it doesn't sound like much, but you know what? They're improving a little bit on that front, and now 8 out of their last 11 games, so they've been able to improve a little bit with that regard, while it is a Georgia team that they themselves have given up fewer than 70 in 2 out of their last 4 games. I certainly think that you're going to be getting quite a bit of scoring here, but I do think that both of these teams do a relatively okay job of being able to guard the arc. I do think that Georgia, a team that they're more around 100th in the country in terms of total possessions per game, they're going to be able to get things just enough under control to be able to remain lively in this game. I set my line at 5 with Alabama, so at 5.5 to 6, which I'm seeing at pretty much most books aside from one. I'm going to be willing to take those points with Georgia, and did set my total 163. So you're at the 165, diving in on the under and taking the points with Old Auga, 673, 674 on the betting board. Central Florida plays those to Baylor. Baylor is a favorite of 3 points. Your total on this game between 139 and 139.5. With Baylor, I made them a favorite of 1.5 points, so I'm going to be willing to take the 3 with Central Florida. The Central Florida bunch has just done an absolutely masterful job of being able to guard up, being a top 10 team in all of college basketball in terms of points allotted on a per possession basis, and they're just a different defense at home rather than on the road. At home, Central Florida is allowing opponents to shoot just 29.9% from three-point range. On the road, this goes to north of 37% from distance. And you just take a look at the points allowed per possession by Central Florida. They give up 81.4 points per 100 possessions at home, 103.1 points per 100 possessions away from home. So darn near 22 points more per 100 possessions in a roadside shoot environment rather than at home. And this is a Baylor team that they very much do see some, shall we say, decline when they're away from home. They are giving up 17.9 points more per 100 possessions when they do leave home, so that's a bit of an issue for them. You've got a Baylor team that has also hit a big giant funk with regards to their three-point shooting percentage since conference play has began. Baylor overall a top 10 team in all of college basketball with regards to both three-point shooting percentage and in terms of their overall offensive efficiency, points scored on a per possession basis, but in conference they're only shooting about 30% from three-point range. I do think that we should see a little bit of a rebound here. You just have too many guys that are able to stroke it in there from three-point range yet. They can't remain down for this long. Jacoby Walter, Ray J. Dennis combined for 28.5 points per contest. They combined to shoot about 36.5% from three-point range. Langston Love is a 47.5% three-point shooter with 11.5 points per contest. Team as a whole still shooting about 40% from three-point range for the season. Jaden Nunn shoots north of 41% from distance, but for Baylor, I do think that they're going to be up against a Central Florida team that they do such a good job down low. They now have CJ Walker's may able to return, give the team a little bit of something down low. The San Jose State transfer and Abrima Diallo, 6.5 boards, 2 blocks per contest. He has been quite good, and they go up against a Baylor team that other than Yves Messi, you really don't have anyone else that gives you north of about 5.5 or so rebounds per game, but this is a Baylor team that is 26th in all of college basketball with regards to their rebound rate. Meanwhile, for Central Florida, this team has been quite dominant on the glass themselves, 39th in the country with regards to their rebound rate. Central Florida, not a team that's really going to stroke it in there from three-point range. So Jaden Sellers, I do think that he's doing for some positivity. With Sellers, last year, he shot about 45% from three-point range at Ball State, 44.4% season before. This year, he's given the team 17 points, 4 boards, but he's only shooting about 28.5% from three-point range. I do think that should iron out just a little bit. Being able to have someone like an Omar Payne down low, I think is going to be able to help out Central Florida. I do think that this is going to be a game that's going to be close enough for late game felling. I think Baylor finds a little bit more offense, but I do think that with the way that Baylor guards away from home as well, I do think that that's going to be a bit of an issue for them as well against a Central Florida team that I think should see some positivity with their offense. I think that this is a game that could be very much close enough for late game felling. So this is a circumstance where I did set my line at a 1.5. I'm willing to take the 3 with Central Florida, set my total 141.5. So also looking over 675, 676 on the betting board. Cincinnati, yes, we are on to Cincinnati. They're onto the road. They're facing off against West Virginia. West Virginia does find themselves as a underdog of 3.5 to 4 points at home. Your total on this game, finding it between 141.5 and 142.5. And with Cincinnati, I did set them as a 6-point favorite, so I'm going to be willing to lay the number. West Virginia has been showing quite a bit more fight recently, with them being able to get back Raekwon Battle, them being able to get back Kirk Kriisa, has been able to help out the offense quite a bit, but they are still missing Jesse Edwards, which I think is just such a key cog for this team. As a result, this is a West Virginia team that, with regards to power conference teams, has one of the worst rebound rates out there in all of college basketball, and now they have to face off against a Cincinnati team that is a top 30 team nationally with regards to rebound rate, especially ever since you were able to get back Aziz Bandaogo. He was the WAC All-Conference Defensive Player of the Year last year, and he's come in and he's done a tremendous job on the glass. About 8.3 rebounds, 1.3 blocks per contest. You've got a Cincinnati team that overall, they're only shooting about 67.5% at the free throw line, which is a little bit of an issue when it comes to this sort of spot, but Day Thomas has really been able to ascend with regards to his backcourt. He has been able to supply the team with at least 8 points with each of the last 5 games, and on top of that, he's given the team at least 4 assists in each of their last 4 games as well. So he's been able to do a really nice job of being able to help this team just fortify itself a little bit in the backcourt. They don't turn the ball over a whole heck of a lot, and with West Virginia having Kirk Reese in the fold, you know that the turnovers are always a big giant concern with them, and when it comes to this West Virginia team, they have gotten a lot out of Raekwon Battle, with him being able to register about 16.5 points per contest. But for one, it feels like he's gotten figured out a little bit, as he has given the team a combined 7 points in the last 2 games. And 2, he's still only shooting about 26% from 3-point range. Like, it's great that he's giving the team points, but they're very inefficient points as well. So I do think that that's just a little bit of an issue with everything that we are seeing as well. I do think that this is a Cincinnati team that, with having so much down low, with being able to get 6+ rebounds per game out of Victor Lakine, who's been able to give 12.5 points, shoots relatively solid from 3-point range, having Sibius Lucasius, who's saying 6'8", he's able to give you 3 assists, 9 points, a few boards, shoots in the mid-30s from 3-point range. It's just going to overwhelm a West Virginia team that they play very slowly, and they're just not playing great defense. West Virginia, they have given up at least 70 points in every one of their conference games this far. They are well outside the top 200 with regards to points allowed on a per possession basis, and with them also not being able to do anything down low, with having Jesse Edwards out of the fold, and in terms of their 3-point shooting defense, allowing opponents to shoot right around 33.5% per distance, as 177th in all of college basketball. I do think that it's an uphill battle for them. So this is a circumstance where I did set Cincinnati as a 6-point favorite. I'm going to be willing to lay the number, and with regards to the total, did set mine at a 142 at a 141.5. I would rather have that over rather than a 142.5 under, just because I do think that there's a case to be made that this is going to be close enough for late game felling. It is still a trip to Morgantown. It is still a lot of travel for Cincinnati. So between a 141.5 and a 142.5, would rather have that 141.5 over. But that said, want to lay up to 5.5 with Cincinnati. 677, 678 on the betting board. East Tennessee State, it's a road face-off against Mercer. Mercer is a favorite of 2 points. Total on this game, 138.5 to 139. With Mercer, I did set them as a favorite of 2.5 points. Want to lay the deuce and not half a point more. This is a Mercer team that's been able to do an okay job with regards to their defense. I'm not going to call them beastly or anything like that. They are still about 216th in all of college basketball with regards to opponents' 3-point shooting percentage. But ETSU, they are 275th in the country with that regard. That is a little bit of an issue for them. ETSU, they should have a little bit of advantage down low. I like Jaden Seymour and the fact that he's able to give the team 7+ rebounds per game. And it is an ETSU team that they're only giving up about 1.9 points more per 100 possessions when they're away from home rather than when they are at home. That's actually very good with regards to a home and road splits in college basketball. ETSU about 155th in the country with regards to their overall rebound rate. Mercer, more in that neighborhood, about 225th, as they really don't have anyone that gives them north of 5.5 rebounds per game. But Jalen McCurry has been able to do a solid job. He's supplying to the team with 15.5 points, right around 6 boards per contest. And when it comes to this ETSU team, they are a bunch that they shoot less than 31% from 3-point range. You've been able to get a lot of nice production out of someone like an Ibi Asamoah, who's been able to give you 15+ points per contest, chips in there quite a few boards, but you just don't have those fortified 3-point shooting options. Karen Boyd is able to give you about 7.5 boards per contest. Meanwhile, this is a Mercer team that's getting a bit more out of the backcourt, as they've been able to have someone like a David Thomas be able to step up, giving you 8.5 points, shooting 38.5% from 3-point range, and has really been able to step it up recently, as he has been able to give the team 8+ points in 7 of the team's last 8 games. Robbie Carmody, he's someone that shoots 37.5% from 3-point range. Mercer also does shoot 66% at the free throw line. That's a little bit of an issue, but it's not like this ETSU team is necessarily overly trustworthy at the line late in games as well, at about 71.2% at the charity stripe. It is an ETSU team that's also turned the ball over about 12 times per contest. Nothing great, nothing terrible, but a little bit of a top-heavy team that has been dealing with a few injuries along the way. They're still missing Justice Smith, someone who was coming in off the bench, was able to give the team a few boards, about 4.5 to 5 points per contest. And for Mercer, they've dealt with injuries all season long. They've become a little bit healthier, and defense has been able to ascend, giving up fewer than 70 points in 3 out of their last 5 games. Meanwhile, this is an ETSU team that's now given up at least 73 points in each of their last 5. So a circumstance where I'm going to be willing to lay up to a deuce with Mercer. And with regards to total, I did set it at a 140.5. ETSU has been falling down a little bit with regards to their defense, and I do think that Mercer is going to be able to exploit that rough ETSU 3-point shooting defense. So looking at that over, and I'm going to be willing to lay the number with Mercer. 679, 680 on the betting board. Western Carolina plays us to Chattanooga. Chattanooga is an underdog of 4.5 points. Total on this game, between 144 and 145, and I did set Chattanooga as a favorite of 5 points. This is going to be a spot where I take them outright on the money line. I am not quite sure why Western Illinois is getting so much love in this spot. With Chattanooga, I really do think that this bunch should be getting much better pricing in the market. It's been a Chattanooga team that all season long, they have been able to do a tremendous job of being able to stroke it from three-point range, especially their top two guys, Trey Bonham, Hunter Huff. Ever since Bonham has come back into the fold, he's been back for 12 games, was one of those two-time transfers that had to sit out. He began his career over at VMI along with their coach in Dan Earl, along with Hunter Huff. He's been able to really ascend this program, shooting 48.5% from three-point range, logging about 17 points. He and Huff are both giving you about 3 assists per contest. You've got Jan Zedek, who's got some good versatility, giving you about 12 points per contest. You do know that with Chattanooga, there's always going to be some doldrums with regards to their defense. They are right around about 160th in the country with regards to opponents' three-point shooting percentage, and they are going up against Western Carolina team that, in their own right, they're a top 125 team with regards to their defense. Western Carolina, in terms of opponents' three-point shooting percentage, though, they can be had at home. They're allowing opponents to shoot 37.8% from three-point range, and that is the bread and butter of the Chattanooga team. As Chattanooga, not really going to overwhelm you down low, though they do have Sam Alexis as well. Sam Alexis has been able to give you about 9 boards, 11.5 points per contest, so I do think that the wrong team is favored here, and I do think that the wrong team is favored by quite a bit. I typically don't have this big of a disagreement, but I do have quite a bit of a disagreement here. It is Western Carolina team that they do have the best overall individual player out there. That would be Vontavious Woolbright. Vontavious Woolbright, he has been impressive. 21.5 points, 12.8 boards, 5.5 assists per contest, but it's what are you going to be able to get out of the other guys? You do have someone like a Trey Jackson and Russell Jones. Both of these guys have been able to contribute a combined about 25.5 points per contest. To the credit of Jones, he shoots 41% from 3, and then Mr. Trey Jackson, DJ Campbell, with both giving you 12 points apiece. They're shooting about 36.5% from distance, but this is a Chattanooga team that's been able to do quite a bit of a better job on defense this year than they've been able to do a season ago, and Western Carolina just is one of those strange teams that they don't play a whole heck of a lot better at home rather than in a roadside shoot court environment. As a matter of fact, I was alluding to the three-point shooting numbers. They're giving up about 3.8 points more per 100 possessions at home rather than in a roadside shoot court environment. This is a Chattanooga team that does a relatively solid job of being able to hit the road with regards to their offense and defense. It does see quite a bit of a tick up there, giving up about 14 to 15 points more per 100 possessions when they are away from home rather than when they are at home. But this is a Chattanooga offense that travels relatively well. I like the way that they've been able to kick it up. As a matter of fact, Chattanooga is scoring more points per possession away from home than they are at home. So typically you award a big giant advantage for home court advantage. I didn't do so here. I think that that's why I've got such a big differential on Chattanooga. I think that they get the job done. I think that they're able to win this game at the free throw line as well. I did set my line at a 143 with regards to this total. Western Carolina, they're about 230th in all of college basketball with regards to total possessions per game. This is a Chattanooga team that is really not looking to run it and gun it either. They're about 186th in the country with regards to total possessions per game. Really like the form of Chattanooga. I'm going to be willing to take a look at them outright on the money line, and I'm going to be taking a look at this total under as well. 681, 682 on the betting board. It is Wichita State. At the road, they're going to be facing off against Tulsa. Tulsa does find themselves as a favorite of between 1 and 2 points. Total on this game is there between 151.5 and 152.5. With Tulsa, I did set them as a favorite of 2.5 points. So here at the 1.5, I'm going to be willing to lay the number. This is a Tulsa bunch that has been able to do a relatively solid job of being able to put points upon the board, and they have been doing a ghastly job in terms of giving up points in conference play. Has Tulsa actually entered into conference play, a top 40 team in all of college basketball in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis? Well, now for Tulsa, they're still 66th in the country in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, but you take a look at what they've done in conference. They are giving up well north of 15 points more per 100 possessions in conference than they did out of conference, but they do have PJ Haggerty, who is able to put it up on the board. This man has been able to give you about 19 points, 3.5 assists. It is a Tulsa team that they do have their issues with regards to taking care of the ball, about 14 turnovers per game, and this is a Tulsa team that make no bones about it. They are really looking to push a tempo. Tulsa, with regards to total possessions per game, they are 25th in all of college basketball, going up against a Wichita State team that is now under the tutelage of Paul Mills, and they're about 100th in the country with regards to total possessions per game. So both of these teams have been looking to crank up their tempo. It is a Tulsa bunch that has been able to get quite a bit recently as well out of Kobe Williams, who's been able to give you 13.5 points, shoots in the mid-30s from three-point range. All in all, it is a Tulsa team that they shoot about 34.6% from the outside, going up against Wichita State team that they look to play fast, they look to take quite a few threes, but they haven't been able to knock down a lot of these threes. They're only shooting about 31.3% from the outside. Kobe Rogers has been able to give you about 15 points, a little bit over a steal per contest. It's a Wichita State team that as well has a trio of guys that will be able to do a good job combining for about 19.5 rebounds per game. Quincy Ballard, Kenny Poto, Dallin Original, they've all been able to do a nice job being able to crash the glass, with Ballard being your main rim protector, being able to give you about 2.3 blocks per contest. So Wichita State should be able to have a little bit of advantage on the glass. Wichita State about 68th in all of college basketball. With regards to the rebound rate, Tulsa more in that neighborhood, about 260th. But with Wichita State, despite the fact that they're about 135th with regards to opponents' 3-point shooting percentage, in terms of opponents' 2-point shooting percentage, that's more around 100th. That's not too bad. The biggest issue that they have in this game is that they are probably going to lose the turnover battle. This Wichita State team just is not generating turnovers under Paul Mills. In terms of turnovers forced on a per possession basis, this Wichita State team just 324th in all of college basketball. Meanwhile, you've got a Tulsa team that they're ranking more around 53rd with this regard, getting a turnover on 20.5% of possessions when they are at home, with this Wichita State team having a little bit of a tough time taking care of the ball. 13 turnovers per game, despite the fact that Harnell Beverly is able to give you about 3.5 assists per contest. He doesn't shoot it well from three-point range. He only gives you about 10.5 points per contest. As a matter of fact, for Wichita State, among players that are giving you north of 4.5 points per contest, you've only got one guy, that would be Kobe Rogers, shooting above 31% from three. I did think that Tulsa going to be able to find a way to be able to get the job done in this circumstance. I did set Wichita State as a 2.5-point dog, so seeing what we've got here, a lot of 1.5/2s. I'm going to be willing to lay up to 2 with Tulsa. Did set my total 156.5. Tulsa doing a great job of being able to put up the points as they have been able to get to now at least 70 points in each of their last 5 games. They've gotten past 75 in 4 of their last 5 games, but they've also given up at least 78 points in each of their last 5 games. Meanwhile, this is a Wichita State bunch that they themselves have given up at least 72 in 4 of their last 5 games as well, including a 112 spot along the way. So, going to be taking a look at the over in this spot and willing to lay up to deuce with Tulsa. 683, 684 on the betting board. George Mason, it's a road face-off against St. Joe's. St. Joe's hopes to not be average Joe's as they find themselves as 4.5-point favorites. Total on this game is anywhere between 143.5 and 144. And with George Mason, I did set them as an underdog of 4 points. So at a 4.5, that will be my buy point on them. This George Mason squad has been able to do a good job all season long of being able to D up and doing a nice job on the interior. The exterior is really where the George Mason team can be had. They're about 262nd in all of college basketball with regards to opponents' 3-point shooting percentage, but this George Mason team, they do a solid job of being able to guard inside. They're not necessarily a team that's going to be going out there forcing a whole bunch of turnovers or anything like that, but you take a look at their interior defense, how teams are shooting from 2-point range against them. They are currently clocking in 10th in all of college basketball. At home, that actually falls to 40.5%, more like 46.7% is what opponents shoot from 2-point range against them in a roadside shoot-to-corner environment, but that's been pretty impressive to take a look at. Meanwhile, this is the St. Joe's team that does rank in the top 50 nationally in terms of points allowed on a per-possession basis, and they do it on the interior and the exterior. 62nd in all of college basketball with regards to opponents' 2-point shooting percentage. In terms of opponents' 3-point shooting percentage, this is a squad that they rank in the top 50 with that regard as well. St. Joe's has a little bit of a top-heavy team, but these top-heavy guys, they're able to do a relatively good job of firing on all cylinders. You've been able to have your main scorer in Eric Reynolds supply 18 points per contest from 3-point range. He is shooting well north of 41% from the outside, and this is a St. Joe's team that overall they do shoot 37.1% from 3-point range. You've been able to get quite a bit more recently out of Rasheed Fleming down low, who's been able to give you about 7 boards, 11 points per contest, while Lynn Greer, Xavier Brown, they're running the show with about 7.2 assists, 23 points per game, and Brown shoots 45.5% from the outside. For George Mason, this has been one of the slowest teams in all of college basketball. They are in the bottom 75 with regards to total possessions per game, and the reason why they've been so stout in the interior is the UNLV transfer in Keyshawn Hall, who's been able to give the team about 17 points, 9 boards, not a great 3-point shooter as George Mason as a whole. They're shooting about 34.5% from the outside. It's been a little bit touch and go for them, but Ronald Polite has been able to give you about 3 assists per contest, so have been relatively impressed by him. It's a George Mason team that, as well, they've been having a little bit of a tougher time on the road, giving up about 8.7 points more per 100 possessions when they're in a roadside shoot-to-corner environment rather than when they are at home, and this is a St. Joe's team that is giving up nearly 19.5 points more per 100 possessions when they are in a road/neutral court environment rather than when they are at home as well. I do think that with St. Joe's, they're going to be able to do a relatively solid job of being able to win the battle on the glass, even though they don't have a bunch of big bruisers or anything like that. They're still about 105th in all of college basketball with regards to rebound rate. George Mason, they are clocking in more around 41st in all of college basketball, but I do think that St. Joe's is going to be able to find a way against a George Mason team that is certainly giving up a lot of threes, and this is a George Mason team that is looking to slow it down quite a bit more, but in this spot, I do think that St. Joe's, they're going to be able to get their 70 points. They've gotten to at least 70 points in pretty much every one of their games here in the month of January, but I don't think that they get much more past that, which is why I did set my total at a 140, and I do think that George Mason, with regards to their rebounding, with the way that they play on the interior, they do just enough to hold in there, even though I can't take them outright. I did set my line at 4, so here at a 4.5, going to be taking a look at the points with George Mason. Set my total at 140, so also looking at the under. 685, 686 on the betting board. It is Rhode Island, and they're going to be playing with LaSalle. The LaSalle is exploring a cover as an underdog of 3 points, and your total on this game in between 148.5 and 149 with Rhode Island. I did set them as a favorite of 3.5 points, so here at the 3, I'm going to be willing to lay it. This has been a Rhode Island team that has been quite bad with regards to their defense. You take a look at them in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. They are clocking in 319th in all of college basketball, but they have been a different team at home rather than away from home. They are giving up about 19.4 points fewer per 100 possessions at home rather than in a road/neutral court environment, and they go up against the LaSalle team that they've really done a good job with a roster that is less than terrific. You've got a pair of guys, Jabari Breakus along with Khalil Brantley, who have been able to combine for just under 29.5 points per contest. Breakus does shoot 40% from 3 for a team that they only turned the ball over 9.7 times per contest. In terms of turnovers on a per possession basis, this team does rank in the top 25 nationally, but this is also a bunch that they just don't have much down low. Deshaun Shepard has been able to give you about 6 rebounds per game, and you do have Anwar Gill, who does a nice job of being a do-it-all sort of guy. He chips in there about 10 points per contest, 3 assists, 3.5 boards. Doesn't really shoot it well from 3-point range, but this team is outside the top 300 with regards to their rebound rate. And for Rhode Island, it's not like they've been necessarily amazing on the glass, but David Fuchs has been able to give you about 6.5 or so rebounds per game. It's a Rhode Island team that has been relatively respectable at being able to hit the glass. They're about 80th in all of college basketball with that regard, and the rebound rate at home actually ascends into the top 55 nationally as well. So this has been quite a bit of a different team when they have been in the great state of Rhode Island rather than in a road/neutral court environment. And they are also going up against the LaSalle team that has had their issues at being able to guard the arc. Fran Dunphy is a heck of a coach. I absolutely love the way that he's able to get the most out of this team. His team is just a little bit outgunned though. LaSalle about 252nd in all of college basketball with regards to opponents' 3-point shooting percentage. Rhode Island, by the way, 323rd, but allowing opponents to shoot more like 34.3% from 3-point range at home. That balloons to north of 39% in a road/neutral court environment. So I do think that even though this is probably going to be a lower possession game, LaSalle is a relatively mid-tempo team, a little bit faster than normal, but relatively in that middle ground territory. Meanwhile, you've got yourself a bunch of Rhode Island that is playing relatively slowly that you're going to be able to get points up on the board, but I do think that this is ballooned too much because Rhode Island is a much better defensive team at home. So I did set my line at a 145.5 with regards to the total. So looking at the under, and with Rhode Island, going to be willing to lay up to 3 points with them. 687, 688 on the betting board. Furman, it's the road face-off against the Citadel. The Citadel finds themselves as a home underdog of 6 to 6.5 points, seeing a straight 7 out there as well. Total on this game, 147. That's where just finding all my big differentials out there in the SoCon. I set my line at 3. I do feel like Furman should be the favorite, but being able to get north of 6 here with the Citadel, I'm going to be willing to take it. I do think that the Citadel is going to be able to do a relatively strong job down low. You've got Quentin Malora-Brown come in for Vanderbilt, and he's been a nice find for the team. He's been able to give you about 9 points, 9 boards per contest for a Citadel team that has one of the better rebounding teams out there in the SoCon. With regards to rebound rate, they're 103rd in all of college basketball. Meanwhile, this is a Furman team that currently they are clocking in about 106th with this regard. They are getting reinforcements back, by the way, as now they've got back the full Marcus Foster, 19.5 points, 7 boards, but it's a team that as a whole, they're only shooting about 32.5% from 3-point range. Furman, though, they are very up-tempo. They are careless with the ball with about 13 turnovers per game, going up against a Citadel team that they're more around about 12 turnovers per game, and they've got a really nice duo in A.J. Smith along with Elijah Morgan. Both of these guys combined shoot about 37.5% from 3-point range. Smith was dealing with a little bit of an injury great earlier in the season, but he's come back. He's been able to supply this team with quite a bit of production. He also gives you right around about 4 boards per contest. As for the Citadel, each of your top 4 scorers have been able to give you at least 4 rebounds per game. They've dealt with injuries with Winston Hill. He's been out since January 3rd, so that's been hurting them just a little bit, but in his absence, we've been getting a little bit more out of the backcourt as Kenyon Davis has been able to step up with at least 7 points in 4 of the team's last 5 games. Not necessarily a prolific three-point shooter, but at 6'5", is able to offer a little bit of stretchability. And for this Furman team, they have turned over a little bit of a new leaf with regards to their defense. They have now given up fewer than 70 points in 3 of their last 4 games. This is a Citadel team that, no question, still has the advantage with regards to the defense, and for Furman, there's no question that being able to put points up on the board is a forte of this team, as it is a Furman team that is about 200th in the country in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, but most of these triumphs have come at home. They are giving up 14 more points, Furman is, when they are on the road rather than when they are at home, though the Citadel, they're only giving up a half a point less when they're at home rather than when they are on the road, and this is a Citadel team that they are about 243rd in all of college basketball with regards to points allowed on a per possession basis, so a very interesting circumstance here, because you would also think that Furman would have a massive advantage with regards to their offense. Furman is about 100th in all of college basketball with regards to points scored on a per possession basis. Meanwhile, the Citadel, they're about 210th, but they are quite a bit better when they are at home rather than in a road/neutral-court environment. And this is a Citadel team that they themselves given up 73 points or fewer in 4 of their last 5 games. I do think that the rebounding is going to be able to help the Citadel stay snug in this one. Was expecting a little bit more out of Carter Witt from this Furman team as well. So it is a circumstance where I did set my line at 3. I'm going to be willing to take the points with the Citadel. I do think that even though Furman has looked a little bit better with their defense recently, them being on the road, and this being, in my opinion, a relatively close game, it's going to cause for some late game fouling to be able to help out with the total over. So did set my total at 147, looking over and looking at the points with the Citadel. 689, 690 on the betting board. East Carolina is going to be playing against South Florida, and South Florida is an underdog of a point. Total on this game is between 138.5 and 139.5. With South Florida, I did set them as a underdog of 2.5 points. So here at the 1, I'm going to be willing to lay with East Carolina. East Carolina is really looking to slow the game down. They are well outside the top 200 with regards to total possessions per game, though. It's South Florida who's got the better defense in this one. It's South Florida has really turned over a little bit of a new leaf under Amir Abdul-Rahim. This is a bunch I was expecting a little bit more from three-point range from. They're shooting about 33.5% from distance. I will say for South Florida, they're still about 110th in all of college basketball in terms of points scored on a per possession basis. Now with that as well, they are scoring about 13.4 points fewer per 100 possessions when they are at home rather than in a roadside-neutral-court environment. That said, this is a South Florida team that, despite the fact that Kashawn Pryor is really the only guy that gives you north of 5 rebounds per game, they've been able to do a solid job on the glass. They're 78th in the country with regards to points allowed on a per possession basis, going up against an East Carolina team that is 143rd with this regard, but East Carolina's numbers are a little bit warped. A lot of their defensive issues came early on during the season, as this is an East Carolina team that all of a sudden has given up fewer than 70 points in each of their last 4 games. That includes games against UAB and Wichita State in the fold, and an overtime game at that against Temple as well. East Carolina has a trio of guys that do a tremendous job of being able to pull on their boards as well. Brandon Johnson, along with RJ Felton and Ezra Uzar. All these guys have been able to give you a combined about 19.5 rebounds per game. They all register at least 13.5 points per game apiece as well. And this is an East Carolina team that, with Johnson being able to offer some versatility, shooting in the neighborhood about 34.5% from 3. Azar has been able to shoot 45.5% from 3-point range. This team is going to be hard to guard, and East Carolina is now ascended into the top 150 with regards to a rebound rate. They don't necessarily get a ton of scoring out of Bobby Pettiford at the point guard spot with about 8.5 points per game, but he's very efficient. Team only turns the ball over about 10.8 times per contest, going up against a South Florida team that they're okay at generating turnovers, and you are seeing Chris Youngblood really stroking it well from 3-point range. He, along with their top scorer, Selton Miguel, have been able to combine for about 29 points per contest. Youngblood, he was off to a really rough start from 3-point range to begin the season, but he's barely been able to hit just that peak form that he was able to find last season under Abdul-Rahim when he shot north of 41% from 3-point range, as overall here in the month of January, he is shooting well north of 40% from distance, so that has been big for a South Florida team that they do a good job taking care of the ball as well, right around about 10.5 turnovers per game. Both of these teams do have some similarities to them. South Florida is a little bit more of an up-tempo team, and they've been a little bit more efficient with regards to their defense just overall for the season. They've given up as well 73 points for fewer in each of their last 5 games, but South Florida, it just feels like they always score between 72 and 75 points. As a matter of fact, they've done so in 3 of their last 4 games, though I do think that East Carolina, that home court environment out there in Greenville, is going to be just enough for them to be able to get the job done in the spot. And I do think that this game is close enough for late game fouling. Coupled with that, both of these teams are allowing opponents to shoot less than 32.5% from three-point range. I think both will see a little bit of regression there. Not a ton, but enough to be able to get you the over in this spot. Semi-total 142.5, so looking over. And with East Carolina, we'll lay up to deuce with them. 691, 692 on the betting board. Fordham is going to be playing us with Richmond. The Itsy Bitsy Spiders of Richmond are a favorite of between 2.5 and 3 points. So this game is between 136 and 136.5. With Richmond, I did set them as a 3-point favorite, so 2.5 is the max that I'm going to be willing to lay, but I'm going to be willing to lay this number. It is a Richmond team that has really been able to come into form and has done such an efficient job of just finding a way time and time again to be able to get these wins. I know it was a butt-ugly first half against Dayton, but they found a way there. Richmond, 24th in the country with regards to opponents' three-point shooting percentage. Also Richmond, a top 5 team in the country in terms of fewest turnovers on a per-possession basis. This is a team that's going to be outgunned down low. Richmond is well outside the top 200 with regards to the rebound rate. That said, this is also a Richmond team that they've got 2 guys down low that are still able to do a relatively solid job. Neil Quinn is a true 7-footer. He's able to give you 13 points, right around about 6 boards, 3.5 assists per contest, and Isaac Bigelow is out shooting nearly 40% from three-point range, 11.5 points per contest, but don't mess with the king. Jordan King. He's been able to give you 42% three-point shooting on 19 points per contest. A little bit of a top-heavy Richmond team, but man, these guys are really firing on all cylinders. Going up against a Fordham team that, they're still in the top 100 with regards to points allowed on a per-possession basis, and really the forte of this defense is generating turnovers. They're able to get about 8.5 steals per contest, but it has just been a rough go of it for this Fordham offense, 71 points or fewer in each of their last 4 games, despite the fact that this is a bunch that they do rank in the top 75 with regards to total possessions per game. They should have a little bit of advantage down low with Abdul Sambilia being able to give you 2.5 blocks, 7 boards, 8 points per contest, but the facilitation of the team, a little bit less than terrific. Antrell Charlton is a do-it-all player, 7 points, 4.5 boards, 3.5 assists per contest, and Yesaf Metter is your top scorer, give you 3 assists, 12 points, and Metter is able to shoot 37% from distance, but Fordham turns the ball for 13.5 times per game with 32% three-point shooting and 64.5% the free throw line. That is a bottom 45 mark in all of college basketball, with Richmond doing a good job of executing the little things, Fordham doing a solid job defensively, but really not doing a good job of being able to take care of the ball through those little fundamental things. I do think that Richmond is going to be able to pull it out, and just due to the sheer amount of possessions in this game, I do think that you are going to be able to get an over, despite the fact that Richmond has been so stout with regards to their defense. This has been a squad that has given up at least 64 points in each of their last 4 games, and this is a Richmond team that they themselves have gotten to at least 69 points very much on the regular. As a matter of fact, this Richmond team, they've gotten to at least 69 points in how far their last 5 games. So I think that this will set just a little bit too low. I did set my total at 139, so at the 136.5, looking at the over, and with the Richmond, willing to lay up to 2.5 points with them. 693, 694 on the betting board. Pittsburgh is playing us a Wake Forest, and Wake is a pick'em game / a 1 to 1.5 point favorite. A lot of places have this as a pick'em. I'm seeing some places emerge with Wake Forest being -1 total on this game. You're finding it between 143 and 143.5, and it's a good old something's got to give scenario. Wake Forest finds themselves as a top 40 team in all of college basketball in terms of points scored on a per possession basis. Meanwhile, you've got a Pittsburgh team that clocks in the top 45 nationally in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, and they've done a really nice job of being able to take away the 3-point arc. Pittsburgh, 31st in all of college basketball with regards to 3-point shooting percentage defense. Meanwhile, this is a Wake Forest team that they certainly are giving it up from 3-point range. Wake Forest, about 140th in all of college basketball with regards to opponents' 3-point shooting percentage in a roadside shoot court environment. That does balloon up to about 33.8%, but Wake Forest has a whole bunch of guys that are just able to stroke it from 3-point range. Now, with Wake Forest, you don't have a lot of depth when it comes to this team, but Kevin Boopy Miller, along with Cameron Hildreth, both of these guys have been able to supply the team with 15-plus points per contest. You've got a Wake Forest team that, as a whole, they do rank in the top 35 nationally with regards to 3-point shooting percentage at 38%. With Hildreth, along with Miller, they combine to shoot about 37% from the outside between the two of them. 7 assists, 32 points per contest. Hunter Salas is your main man that gives you 18 points per game as he and Austin Carr both shoot 39% from 3. And now you're getting back to Mario Monsanto. He has been in and out of the fold. I'm thinking that he should probably be back if he is back in a very limited capacity. He played in those games against North Carolina and Louisville, and then he was missing last week, so it's very much touch and go there. But even if you don't have him in the fold, it's not too much of a fall-off if you have Parker Fredrickson instead be your main guy coming off the bench, as he's been able to shoot about 43.5% from 3-point range, and then after Reed has been able to give the team some rough and tumble down low with about 8.5 rebounds per game. This is a Pittsburgh team that's been able to do a relatively solid job down low. You've got Frederico, who's able to give you a block and 2.5 per contest, and it feels like they've got a whole bunch of solid big men down low, but they don't necessarily have that one dominator down low, as you've got a pair of guys in the Diaz-Graham brothers who are able to give you a few rebounds, as Guillermo has been really the main man, giving you a steal, a block, shooting 37% from three-point range for this Pittsburgh team. Out of your top 7 scorers, 6 of them do give you at least 4.4 rebounds per game. This is a team that does rank in the top 50 nationally with regards to rebound rate. Meanwhile, this is a Wake Forest team that they're more on 128th, but it does need to be thrown in that Pittsburgh played a very weak non-conference schedule. I feel like their numbers have been hiked up just a little bit by that weak non-conference schedule, though you do still have Carlton Carrington, who's able to give you 13 points, 4.5 assists, 5 boards. He's been solid there. And Blake Hinson is one of the best peer scorers in all of college basketball. 18 points, shooting 41% from three-point range as a little bit of a do-it-all sort of guy. So it is a spot where I did set Pittsburgh as a 2-point favorite. Even though they've had a little bit of a tough time in step-up spots, I do think that they are going to be able to get it done against a Wake Forest team that they just haven't been the same defensively when they've been on the road rather than when they have been at home. Overall for the season, Wake Forest in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, 72nd, but they are giving up 19.7 points more per 100 possessions when they do leave home. So a circumstance where I did set Pittsburgh as a 2-point favorite, taking them as a pick'em / a money line underdog. I do think that you get a bit more scoring in this one. I do think that it's going to be very close, nip and tuck. So looking at the over and looking at Pittsburgh on this pick'em line, 695, 696 on the betting board. Notre Dame, it's a road face-off against Virginia. Virginia is a favorite of 13 points. So on this game, between 114 and 114.5. This is a Virginia team that's far better at home rather than in a roadside shoot record environment, and they're going to want revenge after the last time these two teams played. Notre Dame was able to completely punk them, but that said, I just can't lay this number with Virginia. I set my number at 10. I'm going to be taking a look at the points with Notre Dame. Notre Dame has been able to do a really good job of making things really, really yucky, gross, and just grimy. Notre Dame, in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, they are finding themselves in the top 75 nationally. Now, their offense is 330th in the country in terms of points scored on a per possession basis. That's relatively awful. Meanwhile, Virginia is 5th in the country in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, and they've got a mondo split in terms of home and road. They're giving up 25.6 points fewer per 100 possessions at home rather than in a roadside shoot scoring environment. This is a Virginia team that does rank in the top 15 nationally with regards to turnovers forced on a per possession basis. Notre Dame, in terms of turnovers committed on a per possession basis, they are a bottom 25 team in the country when they do leave home, and certainly I don't think we're going to see lightning strike twice, where Notre Dame, the last time they played against Virginia, they won 11-23 from 3. They won that game 76-54. That was a very clear outlier. That said, this is a Virginia team that I just don't have a lot of confidence in them on the glass. This team is well outside the top 200 with regards to rebound rate. Ryan Dunn is the only guy that's getting her done on the glass. He is, as a matter of fact, the only guy on the team that gives you north of 3.3 rebounds per game, 10.2 points, 7.3 rebounds per game. Fully recognize that this is not a Notre Dame team that has some on-stars on their team or anything like that, but you know what? You do have a pair of guys like R.J. Kozinski, Tay Davis that are able to combine for about 11 rebounds per game between the two of them, about 18 points between them as well. Marcus Burton is a turnover machine. It's 4.4 turnovers per game, leads all qualifying players at the power conference level. That said, he is still able to give you about 4 assists. He's done a solid job of being able to supply the team with about 16 points per contest as well. Brendan Shrewsbury has been able to shoot about 33% from 3, and this is a Notre Dame team that they are a very smart team. They've got each of their top 3 scorers shooting at least 80% at the free throw line. This is a Virginia team that has been much different with regards to their 3-point shooting percentage when they've been at home rather than on the road as well. I was talking about their defensive splits, but for the Virginia offense, it is very different as well. Virginia, overall, in terms of points scored on a per possession basis, this team is clocking in 191st in all of college basketball, but they're scoring about 19.5 points more per 100 possessions when they are at home rather than in a roadside shoot record environment. And when it comes to this Virginia team at home, they're shooting darn near 40% from 3-point range at home when they're in a roadside shoot record environment. This is a 3-point shooting percentage that it drops down into the low 30s. So I do think that this is going to be a better spot for Virginia. That said, I do take a look at this number, and I think that it's just way too high considering this is going to be a low possession, grimy game. I do think that the totals went a little bit too far. I set my total at a 118, as this has been a Notre Dame team that has been rough with regards to their offense, 61 points for fear in regulation in each of their last 4 games, but this is a Virginia team that they've been able to get to at least the 65-point plateau in each of their last 4 games. They're a much different team at home rather than in a roadside shoot score environment. I do think that Notre Dame was able to figure something out the first time around. So looking at the over, set my total 118, and I'm going to be willing to take the double figures here with Notre Dame, set them as a 10-point dog, 697, 698 on the betting board. St. Anford plays us to Wofford, and Wofford is an underdog of 11.5 points. So on this game, staying between 159 and 159.5 with Wofford. I did set them as an underdog of 12 points. So you're at the 11.5, not willing to lay anything more than that, but I am going to be willing to lay the 11.5. It's a Samford team that they are playing at warp speed. They're in the top 20 nationally with regards to total possessions per game, and certainly this is a squad that is able to do a nice job of being able to generate those turnovers. In terms of steals per game, this is a top 20 team in all of college basketball with Anchor really leading the way in so many different facets for this team. He gives you a steal, he gives you nearly 2 blocks, 16 points, right around about 6 boards, and shoots 48.5% from three-point range for a team in Samford that, as a whole, they're shooting darn near 40% from distance. It has been absolutely ridiculous what we've seen, and this is just a Samford team that's able to hit a different gear when they're at home. In terms of points scored on a per-possession basis, they're averaging about 21.2 points more per 100 possessions at home rather than in a roadside-shoot-scored environment, and they go up against a Wofford team that has improved with their defense, but they're still about 325th in all of college basketball. In terms of points allowed on a per-possession basis, they are giving up 2.9 points fewer per 100 possessions in a roadside shoot-scoring environment rather than at home, and they themselves do have a pair of guards I like in Corey Tripp, coupled with Dylan Bailey, who will be able to supply the team with 28.5 points per contest. Bailey is able to shoot about 35% from three-point range, and it's a Wofford team that they do a relatively solid job of taking care of the ball. They turn the ball over about 11.3 times per contest, but this is a Wofford team that they might be a little bit outgunned down low as well. Kyler Filovich has been able to give you about 3 assists, 9 boards, 10.5 points per contest, and even though this is a Samford team that you don't have that one guy that's necessarily going to give you a whole bunch of rebounds or anything like that, this is still a Wofford team that, with regards to their rebound rate, they're about 126th in all of college basketball. And you'd expect Samford to be an absolutely terrible rebound rate team, but they're about 150th, despite the fact that they're a team that's a little bit more of a heat-seeking missile that is trying to really just generate a whole bunch of turnovers. And Rylan Jones being able to give you 5.5 assists, 1.3 turnovers per game, I think is going to be big against a Wofford team that, while they do a relatively solid job on the glass, they do not do a good job of being able to guard the three-pointer. Wofford, they are clocking in 313th in the country with regards to opponents' three-point shooting percentage, with Samford being a completely different team when they are at home, as they are a team that they themselves do give up the three ball. I do think that this is going to be turning into a high-scoring expose. It's going to be an up-and-down game that Samford is going to have right in their wheelhouse. I set my number at 12, so here at 11.5, going to be willing to lay the number, and make my total 164. So looking over and looking to lay it with St. Anford, 699, 700 on the betting board. It is Belmont. They play us at Indiana State. Indiana State does find themselves as a road favorite of between 8.5 and 9 points. And your total on this game, it is 162. I set my number at a 9. So at an 8.5 or less, I'm going to be willing to lay it with Indiana State. We were seeing very early on an 8. That got dried up very much. Right now, as I record this, we're looking at 9. So it's a little bit of a wait-and-see mode as I record this podcast, but if we're able to get back down to that 8.5 or better, I am going to be willing to lay this number with an Indiana State team that is a top 25 team nationally with regards to their points scored on a per-possession basis. They go up against a Belmont team that certainly has been playing no defense whatsoever. With regards to opponents' three-point shooting percentage, this is one of the worst teams in all of college basketball, being able to guard the arc in Belmont, 267th in all of college basketball. Though I will say this, Belmont has been a whole heck of a lot better at home at being able to guard the arc rather than in a roadside shoot-scoring environment. They allow opponents to shoot 30.4% from three-point range at home, north of 38% in a roadside shoot-scoring environment. And though this is an Indiana State team that they very much are an all-gas, no-breaks team, this has been a team that's been somewhat okay with regards to their defense. 132nd in the country in terms of points allowed on a per-possession basis. It does balloon quite a bit when they are away from home. They're giving up 18.4 points more per 100 possessions when they're in a roadside shoot-scoring environment rather than when they are at home. And this is a Belmont team that they certainly are better when they are at home. They're giving up about 17.7 points more per 100 possessions when they leave home rather than when they are at home. And this is a Belmont team that does have a pair of guys, Cade Tyson along with Malik Dia. Both of these guys stand north of 6'6". Both of these guys shooting in north of 36% from three-point range, which they combine 33 to 34 points per contest. And then Jacoby Gillespie has been able to do a nice job, giving you 4.5 assists, giving you a double-figure amount of points per game, but they just don't match up, in my opinion, with Robbie Avila. Robbie Avila staying 6'10", and he gives his team absolutely everything. 4 assists, 16 points, 7.5 boards for an Indiana State team that, as a whole, they are shooting north of 40% from three-point range, with Isaiah Swope coming in, shooting 41% from three-point range, 18.5 points per contest for Indiana State. Their top 6 scorers, 5 of them shoot north of 41% from three-point range, and this is an Indiana State team that, with regards regards to their three-point shooting percentage, it travels. They shoot 41.4% from three-point range at home, 40.9% in a road/shooter environment. So it's not like there's some sort of big giant drop-off with regards to their offense when they leave home. Now for Belmont, they're getting quite a bit more out of Keyshawn Davidson. He's taking a little bit of a backseat with regards to his scoring with 7 points per contest this season, but generates a steal, has been able to give out 4 assists per contest. So that's been a big reason why Belmont has been able to stabilize a little bit with regards to their offense. But this defense is getting absolutely carved up. They've given up 77 plus points in 4 of their last 5 games. And the last time these two teams played, Indiana State won by kind of 94-64. They went 16 of 33 from 3, and Belmont didn't shoot it bad. They went 10 of 26 from distance, but they lost the turnover battle. They've lost the rebound battle. I do think that Indiana State is going to be able to do a very solid job on the glass against a Belmont team that currently, in terms of rebound rate, they have been clocking in right around about 286th in all of college basketball. So with Indiana State, we want to lay up to 8.5 with them, and I do think that this total is still too low. We saw Indiana State get past 90 the first time around, semi-total 165. Looking at the over and going to be one to lay with the Sycamore. 7-1, 7-2 on the betting board. Northern Iowa, they hit the road. They're facing off against Bradley, and Bradley does find themselves as a favorite of 7 points. Your total on this game, you're going to be getting it at a 138, and with Bradley, I made them a 5.5 point favorite. So here at the 7, I'm going to be willing to take the points with Northern Iowa. It's a Northern Iowa team that has been quite rough with their defense, to say the least. They are outside the top 225 with regards to points allowed on a per possession basis if you look at the overall season as a whole, but they've been able to do a much better job recently of being able to bulk up with regards to their defense. They have now given up 72 points or fewer in 5 out of their last 6 games. The lone exception is when they played against Drake. Drake is a very, very difficult team. Meanwhile, you do have a Bradley team that they had a very long win streak. It snapped in overtime against Indiana State, but they've really been able to get things going with regards to their defense as well. Prior to that game against Indiana State, they had given up 72 points or fewer in 6 out of their last 7 games. So it is a circumstance where I do think that things are going to be a little bit more tamed in this one, but I do think that you're going to be having a game that's going to be close enough for late game fouling as well, which does throw in there that monkey wrench. As a result, I did set my total at a 141.5. I'm looking at the over. It is a Northern Iowa team that, as well, they have been giving up about 4 points more per 100 possessions away from home. It's not a bad home and road split. Meanwhile, it is a Bradley team that they're still right around about 111th with regards to points allowed on a per possession basis, and a Bradley team that they're shooting about 38% from 3-point range. They go up against a Northern Iowa team that, even with their improved defense, they still have a kryptonite in terms of giving up the deep ball. They are 294th in all of college basketball with regards to opponents' 3-point shooting percentage. This is a Bradley team that, at home, they're allowing opponents to shoot north of 35% from 3-point range. So I do think that both of these teams are going to be able to stroke it from 3-point range. Duke Dean, along with Connor Hickman, they've been able to shoot north of 40% from 3-point range apiece for Bradley, combining for about 28 points, 7 assists per contest. And Malevi Leons, he's shooting about 34% from the outside as a 6'8" combo player, 13 points, 7 boards per contest. It is a Northern Iowa team that's going to be outgunned with that regard down low. You've got Titan Anderson, Nathan Heisey, who are both able to give you about 6 boards per contest, but neither has really a lot of size. Your main size guy is Jacob Hudson at 6'11". He only gives you about 8.5 points, 4 boards per contest, but it's a Northern Iowa team that they only turn the ball over about 10.5 times per contest. They shoot 36% from 3, with Bowen Bourne being able to supply the team with about 14.5 points per contest, and he actually shoots north of 38% from 3-point range away from home, less than 30% from 3-point range at home, so he has actually been at his best when he has been in a road/shooter environment. Both of these teams had some nice win streaks get snapped. Both of these teams are hungry to be able to get back at it, and both of these teams, while they've been able to do a solid job with regards to their defense, the offense of Northern Iowa and Bradley has been pretty consistent as well. Both of these teams shoot it well from 3-point range, and I do think that you get a game that is just close enough for late game felling. I set my line at a 5.5, so I'm going to be willing to take 7 here with Northern Iowa. Set my total at 141.5. It's also looking at the over. 703, 704 on the betting board. Evansville plays host to Illinois Chicago. UIC, the Flames, hit the road, and they're a 1.5 point underdog. Total on this game are between 140.5 and 141. With Evansville, I did set them as an underdog of 2 points. I'm going to be looking at UIC outright on the money line. It is a UIC team that still has some pretty big inconsistencies, and overall, this is a UIC team that is about 90th in the country in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, but if you look only in a road/shooter environment, Illinois Chicago is a top 12 team in the country in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. They do need to cut down on the 12.5 turnovers per game, but they also are able to give you a 5.8 blocks per contest. Toby Okani has done it all for this bunch. 2.2 blocks, about 11 points, 7 rebounds, and then you got a pair of guys in Isaiah Rivera, a couple couple with C.J. Jones, who have been able to combine for 40% three-point shooting. Rivera, 14 points per contest. Jones, your main facilitator, with about 5 assists per contest. A little bit of a top-heavy team, but this team has still been able to do a relatively solid job defensively. And for this Evansville team, they just haven't been the same without Ben Humor-Riches, who was giving you 15.5 points, 5.5 boards as a team's main scorer, was shooting north of 48.5% from three-point range. So now you've been looking a lot more to your 39.5% three-point shooter in Chuck Bailey, who has still been able to give you about 10 points per contest, but he himself, it feels like he's starting to get figured out a little bit more. He's a little bit more of a role player that he can't really play for a full 40 minutes. He's been averaging only about 19 minutes per contest. You've only got one guy on the roster that's currently giving you north of 4.5 rebounds per game. That would be Yassine Toomey. Evansville outside the top 200 with regards to their rebound rate. And this is an Evansville team that they just haven't been able to find any offense recently. The squad has been held to 64 points or fewer in now 6 out of their last 7 games. The defense is still outside the top 200 in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. This is an Evansville team that has some difficulties in terms of being able to guard the three-point arc as well. They're 255th in all of college basketball with regards to opponents' three-point shooting percentage. Not having Humor-Riches in there is just really big because Kenny Strawbridge is just not someone that's able to really give you a lot from the outside. He's able to give you a few rebounds. He's able to be a nice mixer and shaker, but still has his liabilities. I do think that UIC, with their defense, they are the better team in this spot. I set them as a 2-point favorite, so looking at them outright on the money line, set my total at 135 with the way that Evansville, without Humor-Riches, it just went straight down the toilet bowl with regards to their offense. So looking under and looking at UIC outright on the money line. 705, 706 on the betting board. It is Drake playing us to Valparaiso. Valparaiso, a 21 to a 21.5 point underdog. And total on this game, you're going to be finding it at a 144.5. This on my line at 16.5. Valparaiso has been able to play a little bit of better basketball recently, so I'm going to be taking a look at the points. It is a Valparaiso team that, if there is a liability with this team, they are still not giving you a lot on offense. They are 300th in all of college basketball with regards to points scored on a per possession basis. Meanwhile, this is a Drake team that they don't have quite that issue. They are 24th in all of college basketball in terms of points scored on a per possession basis, with Tucker DeVries, the coach's son, being able to do some amazing work for this team. He's been able to supply the team with 5+ rebounds, 15+ points, 3 assists, whatever you need from him, he's able to deliver. Meanwhile, Darnell Brody has been one of the better rebounders out there in the Missouri Valley Conference as well. He's been able to supply the team with north of 6 rebounds per contest, which is something that I think is going to be very hard for this Valparaiso team to match up with. As a matter of fact, for Darnell Brody, a little bit closer to 8.5 rebounds per game. Valparaiso, this is a team that's well outside the top 200 with regards to their rebound rate. But that said, this is a Valparaiso team that has actually given up fewer points per possession when they've been away from home rather than when they have been at home. This is a team that still ranks about 230th in all of college basketball with regards to points allowed on a per possession basis, but they're starting to find their primary scorers, as you've got Isaiah Stafford, Cooper Schweiger, who have been able to combine for about 28.5 points per contest, about 10 rebounds between the two of them, and Schweiger has now been able to shoot about 36.5% from three-point range. Isaiah Stafford has been a little bit in and out of the fold, so you do want to be noting his status. Last time the teams hit the floor against Missouri State, he was out of the fold in that one, and I'm sort of thinking that he plays, but it's going to be very much hubbled in this one, so I've pretty much awarded half credit for him, and even if he does not play in this one, you still have the versatility of the Murray State transfer in Jackson Edwards, who has been able to give you a little bit over a block, 8 points per contest. It is a Valparaiso team that, in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, still relatively rough with that regard, and they have given up 75+ in each of their last 4 games, but this offense has been able to come to life as well. They have scored at least 69 points in each of their last 4 games. Meanwhile, for Drake, man, this team is absolutely manhandling teams. They had a double overtime game against Missouri State. If you look at what they did in regulation, they gave up 65 points in that game. So if you're looking regulation and regulation only, this team has given up 65 points or fewer in each of their last 5 games. I do think that Drake going to be able to do a solid job with their defense, and Drake is going to be able to win this game and win this game rather handily. 21+, I just feel like has went a little bit too far. I've set my line at a 16.5, so I'm going to be taking a look at the total under, as I do think that Drake really coming to their own defensively. Valparaiso alongside the top 100 with regards to total possessions per game as well, so went at the under, but I do think that this is a little bit extreme with regards to the taxation on Drake. Set my line at 16.5, so take the points with Valpo and take a look at the under. 707, 708 on the betting board. Missouri State is on the road. They're facing off against Southern Illinois. Southern Illinois does find themselves as a favorite of 7 to 7.5 points. Total is between 135 and 135.5. Set my line at a 7.5. So here at the 7, not willing to lay really anything more than that, but I'm going to be willing to lay the 7. It's a Southern Illinois team that has a top 5 scorer in all of college basketball in Xavier Johnson, supplying 13 points, 6 assists on 40% three-point shooting. He is third in all of college basketball with regards to his points per game, and he's got a nice core around him. You've got someone like Clarence Rupert, who comes in from St. Peter's, a part of that elite Elite Eight team. He's been able to give the team 6 boards and nearly a block per contest. It's a Southern Illinois team that shoots north of 37% from three-point range, and this team has been able to do the little things really well. They turn the ball over 11 times per contest. They shoot north of 75% at the free throw line. In terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, they're about 79th in all of college basketball, and now they're going up against the Missouri State team that they have sped themselves up quite a bit this season, but they seem to be going back into that slower tempo that they had a season ago as the defense, it's been sort of slipping away from them. They're now outside the top 100 with regards to points allowed on a per possession basis, as they're giving up 8 points more per 100 possessions when they leave home rather than when they are at home. This is still a Missouri State team that does a good job of being able to guard the arc, but they're allowing opponents to shoot more, around 27.8% at home, closer to about 33% in a roadside shoot court environment. And the big key for Missouri State is doing a better job of being able to protect the ball. This team has been turning the ball over about 12.5 to 13 times per contest. They do have some relatively good versatility, as Alston Mason is your top scorer at about 18.5 points, 4 assists, shoots 38% from three-point range, and then Donovan Clay, along with Chance Moore, they're able to give you more. They've been able to give you about 24 points per contest. Clay is able to shoot 34% from 3 at 6'8", 2.5 assists, 6 rebounds per game. And this is a Missouri State team that, if they are going to have a little bit more of a forte in this game, they do have a little bit more size and athleticism, as Missouri State 52nd in the country with regards to rebound rate, but Southern Illinois, they're able to hold their own. They're about 122nd in all of college basketball with regards to their rebound rate as well. They've got the best scorer out there. They've got a lot of good ancillary pieces like a Trent Brown, who's able to shoot it well from three-point range, and a lot of guys that, for lack of a better term, they just know their role. I like Southern Illinois in this spot, set them as a 7.5 point favorite. Don't want to lay anything more than the 7, but going to be willing to lay the 7, and did semi total at a 133.5, so here at 135 plus, looking at the under to go along Southern Illinois. 7-9, 7-10 on the betting board. It is Kentucky. They play us to Florida. Total on this game is between 170 and 171.5, and with Kentucky, find them across the board as a 6.5 point favorite. I did set Kentucky as a 9.5 point favorite. I'm going to be willing to lay the number. Kentucky already went on the road and knocked off Florida a little bit earlier in the season, in which a lot of people thought that that was a really good spot for Florida, but Florida just has not had a lot of good spots in general because it's a Florida team that they do a really good job of being able to hit the glass. They're a top 20 team with regards to rebound rate. They do a great job of being able to give themselves a lot of second and third chances, but other than that, I really don't know what this team truly does well. You do have Zion Pullen, who's able to give you 5 assists and fewer than 2 turnovers per game, but it's a team that they still turn the ball over north of 13 times per contest. They shoot about 33% from three-point range. It just feels like they're very mediocre in a lot of ways, but they just find a way to be able to get to 80 points because of their offensive rebounding, and due to the fact that they just play at warp speed. They're a top 40 team with regards to total possessions per game. This is a Kentucky team that there's no question about it. They're leaving a little bit of something to be desired on defense as well in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. It is a Kentucky squad that is still clocking in well outside the top 75 with that regard, but we saw them against Arkansas. Granted, Arkansas is not the same as it has been in past years, but they were able to play tremendous defense there. Neither team got past 70 points in that one, and it is a Kentucky team that now has Big Z. I'm not even going to try to pronounce his name, giving you a lot of threes. I'm sure that he's going to be out the boards a little bit more for this team. Aaron Bradshaw is someone who at 7'1" is able to pop threes. He's able to give you a block. He's able to give you some rebounds. He does a tremendous job there. And then for this Kentucky team, even if they do have a little bit of a rut with their three-point shooting, as they're shooting 40.2% from three-point range, I do think that there's going to be a little bit of regression with that moving forward. But even if they do, the one concept for this team is that they just don't turn it over. They're a top 10 team in all of college basketball in terms of fewest turnovers on a per possession basis. And they go up against a Florida team that they're giving up 38.5% three-point shooting percentage in a roadside shoot court environment as well. They're a really good opponent's three-point shooting percentage home team. They're not so good on the road. Kentucky is about as rough of a road environment as it gets. Kentucky, top 75 team with regards to cutting off the three-point arc themselves. Now, for Florida, they should be able to win the battle down low. You've got someone like Therese Samuels able to give you 8 rebounds per game. Micah Hanglon has been able to give you about 7 boards per contest. You still have Will Richard, who's able to give you double-figure amount of points. And Walter Clayton, he's been able to tip in there about 3 assists, 16 points per contest. But again, this Florida team, they are much sloppier with the ball with Kentucky than Kentucky, even though Kentucky, once again, I do think that there's going to be a little bit of a fall off with their offense moving forward. They do such a good job of protecting the ball, and now getting Big Z in the fold, that should be able to help them out down low. I did set my total at 171.5. This is a Florida team that they have gotten to at least 79 points in 4 of their last 5 games. This is a Florida team that's well outside the top 50 with regards to points allowed on a per possession basis. So I'm going to be taking a look at the 171 or less over, and I'm willing to lay up to 9 with Kentucky. 7-11, 7-12 on the betting board. Rice, we give our own to Lane Kiffin. Go Owls. They hit the road to face off against Memphis. Memphis is a 14.5 to a 15.5 point favorite. Total on this game is 155. Set my line at a 15. Now that we are getting to about 14.5, I'm seeing a lot of 14.5s as the opener was 15.5. I'm going to be willing to lay it with Memphis. For Rice, in games outside of opponents from the SWAC, the Southland, and the non-D1 level, they have given up 80-plus points in all but 2 of their games thus far this season. It has been not great, to say the least, for our good friends Rice. Now, what I do like about Rice is their versatile big man. As Max Fiedler, he's able to do a tremendous job of being able to hold it out. He's at 6'11", giving you about 5 assists, 9 points, 9 rebounds. He does a really good job of being able to activate this offense, but this Rice team just has not been able to shoot threes the way that they have in the past. Travis Evie, Makai Mason, these are your main 2 scorers. They've been able to combine for about 29.5 points per contest. They're only shooting in the neighborhood about 31.5% from 3-point range, and this has been a Rice team that has been trying to scale back their tempo a little bit this season. It just has not been working out for them. At the very least, when Rice was playing up tempo, you knew that they were going to be able to get points up on the board. They're now about 132nd in all of college basketball with regards to total possessions per game. This is a Memphis team that's certainly running it and gunning it. They are 27th in the country with regards to total possessions per game, but for Rice, this team is outside the top 275 with regards to points allowed on a per possession basis. Outside Fiedler, you don't have a single guy in the roster that gives you north of 4.5 rebounds per game, and this is a Rice team that they are frankly just getting cooked from 3-point range. 341st in all of college basketball with regards to opponents' 3-point shooting percentage. Now, this Memphis team has been slipping up with regards to their defense as well. They're about 176 in opponents' 3-point shooting percentage, 141st in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, but got the best player with them for in Davy Jones, who's been able to give you 20-plus points, 6-plus boards, and right around about 6'6", 6'7", has really been able to take off with regards to his 3-point shooting percentage. You've got Javon Quinterly, who does a nice job of being able to dole out the ball, giving you about 4.5 assists per contest. Can sometimes be a little bit reckless with it with the 2.3 turnovers per game, but even with the issues that Memphis has had, he's not really been the problem for this team. More of the problem has been some of these ancillary pieces. You could use a little bit more than 8 points per contest out of Caleb Mills when he's been out there, and now he's been in and out of the fold as well. We haven't seen him over the last few weeks. Jaquan Walton, 9.5 points, shoots about 32% from 3-point range. You could use a little bit more there. They were thinking that they were going to get something good out of Jordan Brown. He just returned to the roster, so we shall see what happens there. You got Malcolm Dandridge, who just has never really been able to ascend either, but this feels like a really good spot against a Rice team that, they have just been getting absolutely destroyed time and time again. It's a Memphis team in which the offense is not in question. They've gotten to at least 79 points in 4 of their last 5 games. Defense has been getting absolutely destroyed, though, so I do think that you get yourself a nice high-scoring expose in this one, set by total 157, so you're at the 155 looking over, and with Memphis willing to lay up to 14.5 with them. 7-13, 7-14 on the bang board. Louisiana Monroe, it's road face-off against Louisiana. Louisiana just find themselves as a favorite of 13 points. Total on this game, it is 145 to 145.5 with Louisiana. I did set them as a favorite of 13.5 points, so here are the 13. It's max I'm willing to lay, but I'm going to be willing to lay it. This is a Louisiana team that is very efficient with regards to their offense. You've got a team that's shooting well north of 36% from 3-point range, and this has been a top 25 team in all of college basketball at being able to cut off the arc, going up against a Monroe team that's outside the top 3 in terms of points scored on a per possession basis, 13.1 turnovers per game, despite the fact that they're outside the top 250 for Monroe in terms of total possessions per game. You've got Nika with a last name that I can't pronounce, along Tariq LaCour, who will be able to provide about 21 points per contest. LaCour shoots about 34% from 3-point range, and for this Monroe team, they're an above average team with regards to rebound rate, and they should be able to take it to Louisiana a little bit with that regard. Louisiana is a team that's outside the top 200 with regards to their rebound rate. Sans Joe Charles, who's been able to give you about 9.5 rebounds per game. You don't get a ton down low, but this is a Louisiana team that they do a nice job being able to dole out the ball and being able to take it away as well. With Louisiana, they have been able to generate about 8.8 steals per contest. They go up against a Louisiana Monroe team that, as well, they have an Achilles heel with giving up the 3 ball, as they're about 233rd in all of college basketball with regards to opponents' 3-point shooting percentage. And then you take a look at the way that Louisiana has been on such a good job of being able to really give you just a lot more live ball turnovers in general. Louisiana now 24th in all of college basketball in terms of turnovers forced per game. I do think that that's really going to take it out of this Monroe team. And then you've got someone like a Kobe Julian, who has been able to supply the team with a steal, 37% 3-point shooting, 18 plus points per contest with about about 4.5 rebounds per game. You've got Kentrell Garnett, who continues to shoot north of 40% from three-point range. A little bit of a top-heavy Louisiana team, but you'd rather be top-heavy rather than have no talent whatsoever. Though I will say for Monroe, all of a sudden they've been able to win 3 straight games. They've gotten past 70 points in each of their last 4 games. I think that comes to an end here against a Louisiana team that they themselves have gotten past 80 points in each of their last 4 games. They're riding a 5-game win streak, and I do think that for Louisiana Monroe, they're just going to have a tough time taking care of the ball against a Louisiana team that's been very good with regards to being able to take it away. So did set my line at 13.5. I'm going to be willing to lay it with Louisiana. Did set my total at 143.5. I do think that for Louisiana Monroe, we're going to see that offense come back to earth just a little bit. So looking at the under and willing to lay it with the Raging Cajun. 7:15, 7:16 on the betting board. Rutgers plays against Penn State. Penn State does find themselves as a 7 to a 7.5 point underdog. Totals between 142.5 and 144. And with Rutgers, I did set them as a favorite of 6 points. So here at 7 plus, I'm going to be willing to take the points. It is a Rutgers team that is still well outside the top 275 in terms of points scored on a per possession basis, shooting in the neighborhood about 30% from 3-point range. That's a bit of an issue, though. They should be able to do a nice job winning the battle on the glass. This is a Rutgers team that they do rank in the top 50 nationally in terms of percentage of missed shots that do get corralled as an offensive rebound. Cliff Marui, 11 points, 9 boards, north of 3 blocks per contest. You should be able to win that battle down low against a Penn State team that's outside the top 200 with regards to rebound rate. You do have for Penn State Kudus Wahab, who's been able to give you about 8 rebounds per game, but he's the only guy in the roster that gives you north of 4.3 rebounds per game. Now, I will say this. You've had Kanye Cleary really step up for this Penn State team. He's shooting 38% from 3, 18.5 points, 3 assists per game. And this is a Penn State team that has been able to do a relatively solid job of being able to generate turnovers. You can tell that the Mike Rhodes system is starting to make its way into just everyone on the roster, as Ace Baldwin has been your main man, being able to give you double figures, has struggled a little bit from 3-point range, but has been able to generate north of a steal and a half per contest. As in terms of turnovers forced on a per possession basis, Penn State 22nd in all of college basketball, but they generate a lot of those turnovers at home. They're generating a turnover on 24.3% of possessions at home. That falls to about 17.7% of possessions away from home. And Rutgers, they're 30th in all of college basketball in terms of turnovers forced on a per possession basis, and they do a much better job at home rather than on the road. And you're able to say that for the entirety of this Rutgers defense. Rutgers, overall for the season, 13th in the country in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, but giving up 23.9 points fewer per 100 possessions at home rather than in a roadside-shoot-corner environment. This is a Penn State team that they leave a little bit of something to be desired with regards to their outside shooting. Nick Kern has been able to give you about 8 points per contest. You've been able to get something out of Mr. Damian Dunn, who's been able to give you about 7 points per contest, but for Penn State, they shoot 31% from 3-point range. Just not a recipe for success, and this is a Penn State team that has been just getting absolutely plastered on defense recently. They have given up at least 73 points in every single game thus far this month for this Penn State team. I do think that they're going to have their struggles against a Rutgers team that's still pretty rock solid with their defense at home, so this is a spot where I do think that for Rutgers, they're going to be able to get it done. That said, I do think that Penn State does just enough to be able to hold in this game, because even though Penn State is getting plastered on defense, this is a Rutgers team that they just can't find the bottom of the bucket to save their lives. They've been dealing with a bunch of injuries out there in the backcourt. Noah Fernandez has not taken off the way that he was expected to, so this is a line that I set at 6. So at a 7 plus, I'm going to be willing to take the points, and did set my total at 142, diving in on the under and taking a look at the points with Penn State. 7:17, 7:18 on the betting board. Arkansas State plays us to Southern Miss. Southern Miss does find themselves as an underdog of 5 points. So on this game is 151, and with Southern Miss, I did set them as a underdog of 8.5 points. So here at the 5, I'm going to be willing to lay the number. It is an Arkansas State team that honestly has done a worse job of being able to guard at home rather than in a road/shoot-corner environment, which I do find to be very odd. For Arkansas State, they're actually giving up about 7.3 points more per 100 possessions at home rather than away from home, and this is a Southern Miss team that they've been dealing with the injury to Andre Curbelo. They themselves have had their issues with regards to defense. They're 223rd in the country in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, giving up 11.9 points more per 100 possessions when they are away from home rather than when they are at home. And the biggest bugaboo that you do have with the Southern Miss team, they are not guarding the 3-point arc. They are well outside the top 250 with regards to opponents' 3-point shooting percentage, and that's going to be an issue. This is an Arkansas State team that, while they do have their warts, they're actually an okay 3-point shooting defense, 144th in all of college basketball with regards to opponents' 3-point shooting percentage, and this is a Southern Miss team that they're just not the same team that they were a season ago at being able to generate turnovers. They are still about a top 125 team with regards to turnovers forced on a per possession basis, but it's not quite the same as it was a season ago. You do have Victor Hart, who's able to give you a block. He's able to give you about 10 to 11 points per contest, a few rebounds, so he's been able to do a relatively solid job with that regard, but this is still an Arkansas State team that should be able to win the battle on the glass, and I think that they should be able to win that quite easily. Southern Miss outside the top 240 140 with regards to their rebound rate. Arkansas State more around 161st with Arkansas State. You have DeAndre Dominguez doing a little bit of everything, 13 points, 8 boards from 3-point range, shoots about 33% from the outside, and then Freddie X, Taron Todd, along Caleb Fields. This trio, they've been able to combine for about 33.5 points per contest. Fields is able to give you about 5.5 assists per game. The other two guys, about 2.5 assists per contest. And then you've got other guys like an Isaiah Nelson, who's able to give you about 1.7 blocks, about 5.5 rebounds per game. Meanwhile, for Southern Miss, they're very reliant upon Austin Crowley just being able to generate a bit of everything for this team. 15 points, 3 assists, doesn't necessarily shoot it well from 3. That's Donovan Ivory's job, shooting about 40.5% from the outside. But this has been a Southern Miss team that has just not been able to get out of their own way. They're turning the ball over north of 12 times per contest. You take a look at this team and their fall off with regards to offense when they leave home. It has been quite stark in terms of points scored on a per possession basis. This team is 238th overall in college basketball. So I do think that for Arkansas State, despite the fact that they haven't guarded the same way when they have been at home, they should be able to get it done against a Southern Miss team that's playing relatively slowly, having a tough time being able to get points up on the board, especially with that Andre Cabello injury, as they have failed to get past the 70-point plateau in 4 of their last 5 games. And last time these two teams played, neither team got to 70. Southern Miss was able to win that game 69-66 as Arkansas State played pretty much the entirety of the second half before spitting that one out with having Arkansas State go 14 of 34 from 3-point range in that one. I think we should see a fall off there, but I do think that Arkansas State wins battle on the glass and the game. So I did set my line at 88.5. I'm willing to lay with Arkansas State. Did set my total 148.5. So also looking under 719, 720 on the betting board. Providence, it's a road face-off against UConn, and UConn just find themselves as a 13-point favorite. And your total, that is between a 140 and 140.5. With UConn, I set them as a 12.5-point favorite. At 13 plus, I'm going to be willing to take the points with Providence. It's Providence team that has certainly been having its issues without Bryce Hopkins in the fold, but this is still a top 25 team in all of college basketball in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. Now, what we last saw from UConn was just an absolute dismantling and a complete pantsing of Xavier, winning that game 99-56. I'm not even sure the game was as close as that final score would indicate, but when it comes to this UConn team, they certainly are going to be able to win the battle in the backcourt. Tristan Newton, Cam Spencer, these two guys are combining for about 31 points, 11 rebounds. Newton can give you a triple-double on any given night. Meanwhile, Spencer, he's one of the best three-point shooters in all of college basketball, shooting 45.5% from 3. This is a UConn team that's in the top 3 nationally in terms of points scored on a per-possession basis, so it has been incredibly impressive what we've been seeing there. That said, this is a UConn team that they're not quite the same defensively this year as they have been in past years. This is still a relatively solid UConn defensive team, but they're actually a little bit more of an offensive team this year rather than a defensive team, as for UConn, they're going to give you a few open looks from 3-point range. UConn, with regards to their opponent's 3-point shooting percentage, is about 153rd in all of college basketball. Meanwhile, this is a Providence team that has done a really good job of being able to cut off a 3-point arc. For Providence, they rank 97th in the country with regards to opponent's 3-point shooting percentage. This is a Providence team that they very much are reliant upon Devin Carter just being a do-it-all player for the team, especially with Hopkins being out the fold. He's been able to give the team 7+ boards. He's been able to provide about 18.5 points, a little bit over 3 assists per contest as well. This is a Providence team that overall they're not going to shoot it amazing from 3-point range. They're shooting about 32.5% from the outside, but you've been able to get about 42% 3-point shooting out of Jaden Pierre. He's been a little bit in and out of the fold, but ever since he has been able to come back, he has been able to do a relatively solid job recently, being able to put up at least 9 points in each of the last 6 games, has also given you a 3+ assists in every one of those contests as well. So while Providence is still outgunned in the backcourt, and while you do have Jonathan Clingan, giant of the earth, now getting a little bit healthier down low, this is a Providence team that I do think is going to be able to hold their own. UConn, one of the best rebounding teams in all of college basketball, and Providence not going to quite be able to win the battle down low, but this is still a Providence team that is about 104th with regards to the rebound rate, with Josh Oduru giving you a few boards. So I do think the Providence does just enough to be able to hold in this game, and I did set my total at a 140.5. UConn has been just absolutely tremendous with their offensive efficiency, but they have scored fewer than 70 points in 2 of their last 3 games. Meanwhile, this is a Providence team that they themselves have been giving it up a little bit more, giving up 75+ in 3 out of their last 5 games. So here at a 140, I'm willing to go over, set my total 140.5, and anything of 13 or greater, take the points with Providence. 721, 722 on the betting board. Missouri plays us to Arkansas. Arkansas does find themselves as an underdog of 4.5 points. So on this game is 143.5. Good old game of something's gotta give, and I am out on this Arkansas team, but I'm going to be willing to take the points here. I can only set Missouri as a 4-point favorite. This is a Missouri team that they themselves have plenty of warts. Missouri, in terms of their rebound rate, they're outside the top 200 nationally. Now, Arkansas, this has been a rough offense. This has been a rough defense. They're outside the top 150 in terms of both points scored and points allowed on a per possession basis, but they do have 2 really good scorers in Tremont Mark along with Kaylee Battle, who have been able to combine for nearly 30 points points per contest. Both are shooting 37.5%+ from three-point range, so I do think that they're going to be able to find it a little bit more, and it's very similar to what Missouri has, because for Missouri, you've got John East, who's giving you 16 points, 4 assists, shooting 46.5% from three. Tabar Bates is shooting 45.5% from three. Yet the team as a whole shoots 32.5% from the outside, and both of these teams are having their rebounding warts. Trevon Brazile is really the only guy for Arkansas that's able to give you north of 6 rebounds per game, so it has been very much similar struggles for both of these teams, and you have to wonder which of these teams is just going to be able to guard a little bit better. For Arkansas, in terms of opponents' three-point shooting percentage, they are clocking in about 218th in all of college basketball, and opponents are actually shooting worse from three-point range against them in a roadside shoot corner environment rather than at home. For Missouri, they're about 181st in the country. Opponents are shooting 32.5% from three against them at home in a roadside shoot corner environment. That goes to about 34.7% from the outside. I just still am wondering where Connor Vanover is. He just has not been able to fit this system. Noah Carter for this Missouri team has been able to shoot about 27.5% from three-point range. It feels like every single time we think we have a good spot with Missouri, they just come up snake eyes. They have scored 70 points or fewer in 4 of their last 5 games. Meanwhile, for Arkansas, they have scored 68 points or fewer in 4 of their last 5 games. Good old situation of something's got to give. Set my line at 4, so I'm going to be willing to take 4.5 or more with Arkansas. And I do think we're going to see a little bit of an offensive explosion from two teams struggling on offense and struggling on defense. I think this is close enough for late game felling. Set my total 146. Looking over, I'm looking at north of 4 with Arkansas. 723, 724 on the betting board. UAB, it's a road face-off against North Texas. North Texas is a favorite of between 7 to 7.5 points. Totals between 132.5 and 133. And with UAB, I did set them as an underdog of 7 points. So now that we're getting to a 7.5, I'm going to be willing to take those points. It is a UAB team that has been quite different when they have been on the road rather than when they have been at home. Honestly, they have actually been able to guard the three-point arc a little bit better when they have been in a roadside shoot-to-court environment. And you do take a look at this UAB team, and defense is still leaving a lot of something to be desired in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. 264th in all of college basketball, and the biggest thing for UAB is being able to hit the glass, as Yaxel Lenborg has now been able to give you 9+ rebounds per game. He's been able to give this UAB team a lot of second and third chances, and that's exactly how they've been able to generate their offense, as they're only shooting about 32% from three-point range, and it falls off a little bit when they are away from home. But this is a UAB team that does rank 61st in all of college basketball with regards to their total rebound rate. This is a North Texas team that they do a solid job on glass as well. They're 70th in all of college basketball with this regard. You've been able to have someone like a Mule Sissoko be able to give you about 6 to 7 rebounds per game. Does not give you too much scoring at all, but does a relatively solid job of being able to guard the post, being able to hit the glass. It is a North Texas team that they do get a little bit loose with the ball with about 12 turnovers per contest, but you've got a pair of guys that I really like in the backcourt, Reuben Jones, along with Jason Edwards, who've been able to combine for 29.5 points per contest. Both shoot between about 34.5 to 35.5% for three points. For a North Texas team that, as a whole, they do shoot 36% from the outside. UAB, one of their big Achilles heels, has been guarding the three-point arc, while North Texas, that has not been an issue for them whatsoever. North Texas, 40th in the country with regards to opponents' three-point shooting percentage. UAB, 287th in the country, but again, it actually falls off on the road. Opponents shoot 34.6% from distance against UAB, away from home 36.3% when they are at home. But the big key for this North Texas team is just being able to have that consistency with regards to not turning the ball over. That has been a little bit of a bugaboo for them, for North Texas, ever since that opening night game against Northern Iowa. They have given up 72 points or fewer in all but one of their games. This has been a UAB team that has certainly been giving it up themselves. They have given up north of 69 points in pretty much all but 2 of their games out there in the American. So it's a very interesting situation. UAB is going to be looking to gun it. North Texas is going to be looking to slow it down. I did set my total at a 133. I'm seeing a 132.5 out there. I would be willing to take that over. Both of these teams, lots of familiarity from Conference USA last season. So I do think that getting anything north of 7 with UAB in a rather nip and tuck game is very advantageous. Going to be looking at 7.5 with UAB, and going to be taking a look at 132.5 or less over. 725, 726 on the betting board. Auburn is going to be playing against Vanderbilt. Vanderbilt, a 18.5 to a 19.5 point underdog. Total on this game is 141. I did set my total at 144.5. I'm going to be taking a look at this total over. This is a pair of teams that have already hooked up a little bit earlier this season, as you saw Auburn go on the road and they were able to trounce Vanderbilt by north of 20 points the first time around, and I do think that you're going to see something somewhat similar, though I did set my line at 18 18.5. I think we perhaps went a little bit too far. As a matter of fact, first time around, it was 80-65 to correct myself from the first time around. Auburn was able to get that win as Vanderbilt in that game went just 4 of 18 from three-point range. They found a way to be able to get to the free throw line, but for Vanderbilt, they were outgunned on the glass. It was a Vanderbilt team that was able to play relatively even up with regards to the turnovers, though, and I do expect that here because Ezra Magnon does a good job of being able to dish out the ball at the point guard spot. Vanderbilt only turns the ball over about 10.8 times per contest. Problem is, they really don't have a lot of shooting. They shoot 28.5% from three-point range. Vanderbilt, they're outside the top 225 in terms of both points scored and points allowed on a per possession basis, and trying to match up with Auburn down low is going to be rough. They've been dealing with the injury to Colin Smith all season long, so your main man has been Van Allen Lubin, being able to give you about 5 boards per contest, along Tyron Lawrence, who's just a do-it-all player, 14 points, 5 boards, pops a few threes, doesn't necessarily pop them very well. Meanwhile, you've got G&I Broom cleaning up down low for this Auburn team. He has been able to be a main headline guy for an Auburn team that is about 59th in the country with regards to rebound rate. With Broom, he's able to give you 8 boards. He's able to give you north of a block per contest. A very complete player that is now able to pop a few threes for this team. But for Auburn, really the big key for this team is doing the little things well. They're not like some sort of flamethrower from three-point range. They shoot about 32.5% from three, yet they're a top 25 team in terms of points scored on a per possession basis because you've got such great balance with this team. You've got 7 different guys that give you north of 7 points per contest. You've got someone like Chad Baker-Mazara, who's able to be a little bit more of an outside stroker, 9 points, 2 assists, shoots 38% from three-point range. You've got Jalen Williams, who does it all, 39% three-point shooter, about 12 points, 5.5 boards, 2 assists. I absolutely love what they're getting there. Aiden Holloway does a good job taking care of the ball for an Auburn team that only turns the ball over about 10.5 times per contest. And this is an Auburn team that they just get after you defensively as well. They force some turnovers, but they also do a good job just with regards to manning up, 19th in the country with regards to opponents' three-point shooting percentage. I do think that for Vanderbilt, they're going to have it taken to them once again, but I do think that they're going to have a little bit more success in this game than the 4 of 18 three-point shooting that we saw the first time around. So I did set my total at a 144.5. I do think that we get a very similar scoring output to what we saw the first time around when it was 80-65. So going to be taking a look at this 141 over, and with Auburn, made them an 18.5 point favorite, so I had 19 plus taking the points with Vanderbilt. Now we get my DK Network right up pick 727, 728 on the betting board. Boise State then third face off against New Mexico. New Mexico is a favorite of 9.5 points. Total this game is 152 to 152.5, and my write up, I'm going to be taking the points with Boise State. I'm banking on their defense. I set my number at a 6.5. This has been a New Mexico team that has been incredibly impressive, and while we talk about the New Mexico offense, I do think that we actually need to give more credence to their defense, as New Mexico entering into Tuesday was 33rd in the country in terms of points scored on a per possession basis. They were actually 12th in the country in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, but what this Boise State team is going to do, they are going to cut you off after one opportunity. They allow opponents to grab 18.1% of their missed shots as offensive rebounds in a road/neutral court environment. That is number 3 in all of college basketball. Boise State certainly leaving something to be desired on the offensive side of things. They're about 158th in the country with regards to points scored on a per possession basis, as you can tell that they are missing Marcus Shaver from a season ago. They really don't have that one guy that's going to give you a whole bunch of assists right now. Their 6'9" combo player, and Cam Martin is the main facilitator, but you do have Chibuzo Agbo, who's been able to shoot right around about 41.5% from three-point range, and then Omar Stanley has become very versatile for the team. 13 points, 6.5 boards, shooting 38% from three. Felt like a misfit part towards the beginning part of the season. Now he's really been able to find his footing with regards to this team, and this is a Boise State team that, with Stanley, they're playing a little bit more physically on defense. They allow 20% of opponents' points to come from made free throws. That's 119th in the country, but this is a New Mexico team that they are outside the top 225 with regards to their free throw shooting percentage. They're only shooting about 69.5% at the charity stripe, and for everything that New Mexico does well, it's not necessarily three-point shooting percentage. They've got Jalen House, who's able to do it all, with about 2.5 steals, 15 plus points per contest, and he's been able to shoot in the neighborhood about 37 or so percent from three-point range. But as a whole, this team only shoots about 34% from three-point range. They face off against the Boise State team that has been one of the better teams in all of college basketball, being able to cut off the arc. They're allowing opponents to shoot just 28.8% from three-point range. That is a top 30 mark in all of college basketball. As a matter of fact, that's an 11th ranked mark in all of college basketball. The versatility of Tyson Dagenhart, I think, is very big in this spot as well. New Mexico, there's no question about it. They're playing much better at home rather than on the road, and they should be able to do a nice job down low. With having JT Toppin being able to give you 7+ rebounds per game, I love the way that they've been able to fortify things with he, along with Junior Joseph, who's also been able to give you about a block and a half, 8 rebounds per game. But I do think the Boise State is going to be able to match up with the physicality. This is a Boise State team that, really aside from their overtime game against Utah State, they have not allowed north of 70 points for the entirety of the month. As a matter of fact, the last game that they played against Utah State, that is the only game that they have allowed north of 70 points in ever since the ESPN Events Invitational against Virginia Tech prior to Thanksgiving. So I do think that Boise State going to be able to hold up here. I think they're going to utilize that defense, slow this game down a little bit, set my line at 6.5. My right up here is going to be on Boise State with the points. And I set my total 146.5. So one at the under and my right up, that's on Boise State. 729, 730 on the betting board. St. Mary's is going to be playing against Santa Clara. Santa Clara is an underdog of 12.5 points. This is the last game on the normal Las Vegas betting board before we hit the X Games, by the way. Dawn's game between 135.5 to 136. I did set St. Mary's as an 11.5 point favorite. Here at a 12.5, I'm going to be willing to take the points. Last time these two teams played, Santa Clara got completely punked on their home floor. They had just knocked off Gonzaga. They were feeling themselves, and, well, they got absolutely pummeled in that game, as I don't think that they got to 50 points. That was a 73-49 loss. St. Mary's was able to do everything well, and this is a St. Mary's team that is starting to restore order with regards to their offense. They were brutal at the beginning part of the season. Now they've been able to get to at least 73 points in 4 out of the last 5 games. As a matter of fact, they have gotten to the 70-point plateau all but once here in the month of January. It's been big thanks to Ada Mahaney, who's been able to give you 3 assists, a steal, shooting 35% from 3 points. It is still a St. Mary's team that leaves something to be desired with regards to their 3-point shooting percentage at about 32%, and they are facing off against a Santa Clara team that they've got size. Christoph Tilley is a 7-footer that's able to give you 5 rebounds per game. Johnny O'Neal at 6'11", he does a relatively solid job of being able to pop a few threes, give you good overall versatility, but this is the St. Mary's team that is going to be up for the task. They're always one of the best teams in the country with regards to their rebound rate, and they are currently number 2 in all of college basketball. Santa Clara is number 44th in their own right. This is a Santa Clara team that is a little bit more lax with regards to their opponent's 3-point shooting percentage, as they're allowing opponents to shoot it at a clip of about 32.5% from 3. That is 109th in all of college basketball. Meanwhile, St. Mary's, they're about 105th in all of college basketball in this regard, but I do think that the defense for Santa Clara is going to be able to hold up here. You've got Mitchell Saxon, you've got Joshua Jefferson down low for St. Mary's. These two guys have been able to combine for about 14 rebounds per game, but with Santa Clara having some guards out there that are able to do a nice job being able to hit some threes, which I think they're going to be able to have more of them than they did the first time around, shooting about 37.5% from the outside overall for the season. Adama Ball, Carlos Marshall being able to provide a combined about 29 points per contest. With Marshall, he's currently shooting 45% from 3-point range. I do think that you get just enough from Santa Clara to be able to cover this number. It's a Santa Clara team that's hot with regards to their offense as well. They had scored at least 77 points in 5 out of their last 6 games. The lone outlier was at 49 against St. Mary's. I do think that St. Mary's is going to be able to slow them down. Not to that extent, though, that I will say about St. Mary's. They have now allowed 60 points or fewer in each out of their last 5 games, and they have not allowed an opponent to reach north of 70 points since really the latter half of November. So this is a spot where I do think that it's going to be a little bit of a lower scoring slog. I set my total at a 131.5, looking at the under, and at north of 12, taking the points from Santa Clara. Now we hit the extra games.
The normal betting board picks are complete, but there are some extra games today, so we go into the bonus.
306-501, 306-502. Bucknell plays us of Loyola, Maryland. Loyola is an underdog of 8 points. Your total on this game is 134, and with the bracket plus some Bison, I did set them as a favorite of 7.5 points here at the 8. I'm going to be willing to take the points. It is a Bucknell team that has the best player out there on the floor. That would be Mr. Jack Forrest, who's been able to give you 15 plus points. At 6'6", 6'7", he's able to drain a mid-30s amount of his threes, and then you've got Noah Williamson, a true 7-footer that's able to give you about 6 rebounds per contest. But Golden DK should be able to help Loyola Maryland be able to remain in this game from a rebounding perspective. He's been able to give the team 7 plus rebounds per game. The biggest issue that you've got with Loyola Maryland, they're outside the top 300 with regards to taking care of the ball. Their turnover ratio is really, really bad. This is a Bucknell team that it's not like they're necessarily dominant on the glass either. 213th of the country with regards to their rebound rate. Loyola Maryland actually has a little bit of a leg up here at 189th. And the biggest thing for Loyola Maryland is just being able able to protect the ball. You do have a pair of guys in D'Angelo Science along with Dion Perry who have been able to combine for about 24 points per contest. Science is one of the better three-point shooters in this conference at about 37.5% from the outside. All in all, Loyola Maryland is shooting about 34.5% from three-point range. They do shoot 65% of the free throw line. That is something that you do want to take note of. But Bucknell at home, they're allowing opponents to shoot north of 38% from three-point range. Loyola Maryland, they're putrid with regards to their three-point shooting defense as well. 327th at all of college basketball. But really outside of Williamson along with Forrest, you're not getting a lot of production out of Bucknell. Some of their ancillary guards have been a little bit banged up this year. You haven't gotten a lot out of someone like an Elvin Edmonds as well. So it's a circumstance where I do think that this number is a little bit too lofty. I do think that you might be in for one, a little bit of late game felling, and two, neither of these teams can guard the three-point arc to save their lives, which is why I did set my total at a 135.5. I'm going to be taking a look at the over. On top of that, you do have a Bucknell team that all of a sudden they've been able to get to at least 70 points for their last 5 games, and well, let's give it up at least 70 points in 3 out of their last 4 games as well. So looking at the over, and we'll take A+ here with Loyola Maryland. 306.503, 306.504. Presbyterian is going to be playing us USC Upstate. Upstate is an underdog of 1.5. Total on this game is 142.5. With Upstate, set them as an underdog of 4 points. I'm going to be one to lay the number. This is a Presbyterian team that has been a really mid-tempo team thus far this season, but they've got some guys that are really able to bomb from three-point range. You've been able to have Samaje Teal, who's been able to shoot north of 44% from three-point range. He and Marquise Barnett are really your main 2 scorers for this team, with a combined about 27 points per contest. You've got a Presbyterian team that is probably going to get a little bit handled down low in terms of not necessarily having that one big true guy, but that said, this is a USC Upstate team that, despite the fact that Amir Langlis is probably your best true low-post player in this game, Upstate is 359th in all of college basketball with regards to their rebound rate. Meanwhile, this is a Presbyterian team that is clocking in more around about 250th with that regard. Out of your top 7 scorers, 5 of them do give you at least 4 rebounds per game. You're hoping for a little bit more. Trevon Reddish Rowan, who's only going to give you about 6 points per contest, but this is a very balanced team. Now for Presbyterian, they only do shoot about 65.5% of the free throw line. Could come into play in a rather nip and tuck game, but Upstate 63.2% at the free throw line. They shoot about 33.5% from three-point range. You've been able to get a combined 25 points out of Trey Borneau along with Justin Bailey, but it is a bunch that they just don't do a great job of hitting the glass. They don't necessarily shoot it amazing from three-point range as well. They do a solid job taking care of the ball with about 11.5 turnovers per game, going up against a Presbyterian team that they don't necessarily force a bunch of turnovers, but Upstate outside the top 275 with regards to points allowed on a per possession basis. And when it comes to the USC Upstate team, they leave themselves very prone to giving up the outside shot. USC Upstate in terms of opponents' three-point shooting percentage, currently 307th in all of college basketball. I do think that Presbyterian on their home floor gets it done, set them as a 4-point favorite, so going to be one to lay the number. And with regards to total, did set it at a 142.5. You've got an Upstate team that has really had a tough time with their offense, scoring 71 or fewer in 4 out of their last 5 games. Really, both of these teams have now scored 71 points or fewer in 4 out of their last 5 games, so I do think that it's going to be a slog on both sides. I'm going to be taking a look at this total under, and I'm going to be willing to lay it with Presbyterian. 306.505, 306.506. Colgate plays us Army. Army is an underdog of 14 to 13.5 points. So on this game is between 128.5 and 129 with Army. Made them a 12.5 point underdog. I'm going to be willing to take the points. This is a Colgate team that, they're still the top team in the Patriot League, but they're just not the same 3-point shooting team that they have been in past years. Each of the past 3 seasons, they've been a top 10 team in all of college basketball with regards to 3-point shooting percentage, and this year they're slightly above average at about 36%. Braden Smith is a do-it-all guy that is the best player, in my opinion, in this conference. 13 points, 6 boards, 6 assists, 1.8 steals on 35% 3-point shooting, and for Colgate, they're very consistent with regards to the way that they don't turn it over, only about 11 turnovers per game, but they go up against an Army team that, I'm not saying they're amazing with regards to their defense, but they're 127th in the country in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. You look at just a road/neutral court environment, they're a top 40 team in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. Army has been able to do a relatively solid job of being able to hold up at the point of attack down low with Charlie Peterson, great name, being able to give you about 5 rebounds per game. It's an Army team that is allowing opponents in a road/neutral court environment to shoot 31.1% from three-point range. Colgate, meanwhile, they're a top 50 team with regards to their opponent's three-point shooting percentage, and it is an Army team that they very much have struggled with their offense. Bottom 10 team in all of college basketball with regards to free throw shooting percentage, but you've been able to have some young freshmen be able to rise up like Josh Govins, who's been able to give you 11.5 points per contest. He from three-point range only shoots about 28.5% from three-point range, but you've been able to have Ryan Curry be able to give you 10.5 points, 3 boards, 3 assists, 36% three-point shooter. He has been massive for an Army team that all of a sudden they've looked a little bit more respectable here. They have lost 4 out of their last 5 games, but all but one of these losses have been by 10 points or fewer. It's been an Army team that just hasn't been able to put the ball in the bucket. Last time they were able to get to the 70-point plateau, you have to go all the way back to January 6th, and the last time they exceeded 70 points against a D1 opponent, because they have played against a lot of non-D1 teams, and this is regulation only because they have played a few overtime games. You have to go all the way back to the 2022-23 season. So I do think that this is going to be more of a low-scoring slog. I set my total at a 130.5. Here at 129, I do think that we went a little bit too far. It is a Colgate team that they've exceeded the 73-point plateau in 3 of their last 5 games, and though Army hasn't been able to exceed 70 too much, I do think that they have the ability to be able to get to 60 here. So here at a 129, looking at the over, but we'll take anything north of 13 here with Army. 306-507, 306-508. Duquesne is going to be playing against Chicago State. Chicago State is a 12.5 to a 13-point underdog. Totals between 132 and 133. Set my line at a 16. I'm going to be willing to lay this number. I know that Matt was talking about perhaps getting like a 13 plus here with Duquesne, and this is a little bit short in my opinion. This is a Duquesne team that they're still rudderless, they're still strange, but they are going to have, in my opinion, the best 2 players out there on the floor in Day Grant, along with Jimmy Clark, who will combine for about 34 points per contest. Now, I will say, Wesley Carded, he's been able to do a really nice job for this Chicago State team. He's able to give you 16 plus points, 5 plus boards, shooting in the mid-30s from 3-point range, and for Chicago State, they're a top 50 team in all of college basketball with regards to turnovers forced on a per possession basis, but also for Chicago State, you have to wonder if just the lack of games that they have been getting has really been affecting them. They had a very top-heavy schedule, and they last played against a Division I opponent on the 15th of January. They played against 2 non-Division I teams in which they absolutely mopped the floor with. I have to wonder if them cooling down a little bit with that regard is actually a bad thing for them. Meanwhile, they go up against a Duquesne team that has been able to find their footing with regards to their defense. They have now given up 72 points or fewer in each of their last 6 games, or about 130th in the country with regards to points allowed on a per possession basis. They have to deal with the injury to Andre Seversov, who has not been in the fold last few weeks, but you'll be able to get some relatively good production down low out of Fusani Drame. He's been able to give you about 4.5 rebounds to 5.5 rebounds per game, and Jayshawn Corbett, when it comes to the Chicago State team, he's been able to give you about 7 rebounds per game, but that's where the Chicago State team is really going to be outgunned in terms of rebound rate. Chicago State is currently clocking in 283rd in the country with regards to that. Meanwhile, it's a Duquesne team that I'm not saying that they're amazing down low, but they're more around 199th with regards to their rebound rate. This is a Chicago State team that has had a tough time being able to put the ball in the bucket all season long from 3-point range. They are shooting from distance about 31.3% from 3 with about 13.5 turnovers per game. You do have Noble Crawford, who's been able to give you about 2 steals per contest along with Brent Davis, but I do think that Duquesne does a solid job being able to take care of the ball. They're only turning the ball over about 11.9 times per contest. Does feel like they're starting to find quite a bit more out of these young guys as well. I do think that Duquesne is going to take it out of a Chicago State team that, again, they just haven't played against a D1 team in 2 weeks. So this is a spot where I did set my line at 16. Going to be one to lay with Duquesne, and did make my total 134, as I do think that Duquesne is going to be able to exploit a Chicago State team that, while they do a nice job of being able to generate turnovers, this is a Chicago State team that leaves themselves very prone on the inside to giving up some easy buckets. They've done a nice job being able to guard the 3-point arc at about 106 in all of college basketball with regards to opponent's 3-point shooting percentage, but when you knife it down low, that's where you're really able to get some points on the Chicago State team, as with regards to opponent's 2-point shooting percentage, Chicago State currently 337th at all of college basketball. So going to be willing to lay the number of Duquesne, and going to be taking a look at the over. 306-509, 306-510. Gardner-Webb is playing OCU, UNC Asheville. Asheville, an underdog of between 2.5 and 3 points. Total on this game was 149.5 with Asheville. I did set them as a 1.5 point favorite. I'm going to be looking at them all right on the money line. Do recognize that Asheville does have their warts, but this team has done a really good job of being able to guard the 3-point arc. 47th in all of college basketball with regards to opponent's 3-point shooting percentage. And this is just not the same Gardner-Webb defense that we've seen in past years. Losing Lufile to Field along Kareem Reed really caused them to go from having one of the better interior defenses in mid-major college basketball to being very weak down low. 210th in the country is this Gardner-Webb team in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. And this Asheville team, they're more around 263rd, which is a little bit of an issue, but Drew Pember should be able to eat them alive down low. 18 plus points, 7 plus boards, shooting in the mid-30s from 3-point range with north of a block and a half per contest. That's big going up against Charles Robinson, Julian Sawarmo. On the flip side for Gardner-Webb, pair of guys who will be able to give you about 28 points per contest, but for Gardner-Webb, you really don't have a lot of ancillary pieces for this team as well. DQ Nicholas, someone that's able to give you about 3 assists per contest. He's been able to do a relatively solid job there, but you then have Caleb Burgess on the flip side for Asheville, an assist-to-turnover ratio north of 2. He's been able to supply the team with about 5 assists per contest. Fletcher Abey, he shoots 41.5% from distance. As a team, it's a UNC Asheville bunch that shoots about 37% from 3-point range. And this is a Gardner-Webb team that they do do give up the arc. Gardner-Webb is allowing opponents to shoot 37.6% from three-point range at home. That's a big, giant issue, especially when you don't have a lot of rebounding. This is a Gardner-Webb team that, with regards to their rebound rate, they are well outside the top 235. Meanwhile, it's a UNC Asheville team that I'm not saying they're amazing on the glass, but they're about 235th, and they've got Nicholas McMillan, who's able to give you about 5.5 rebounds per game to fortify that. So I do like Asheville to be able to go on the road, get the job done outright. I did set them as a 1.5 point favorite, so looking at Asheville on the money line, did set my total at a 147.5 as well. I do think that Asheville going to be able to hold up defensively. This is a Gardner-Webb team that, while they've been quite ghastly with regards to their defense, they've been able to slow things down a little bit more, and they've given up 70 points or fewer for their last 5 games. It's a UNC Asheville team that they themselves have given up fewer than 70 in 3 out of their last 4 games as well. So looking at the under and Asheville on the money line, 306.511, 306.512. Charleston Southern, it's road face-off against Radford. Radford is a favorite of 7.5 to 8 points. So on this game, 135.5. So Radford is a 13-point favorite. I'm going to be willing to lay the number. Charleston Southern has been able to have some better results recently, but I do think that they're going to have a tough time down low. Justin Archer, along Tajay Kelly, both do give you about 8 rebounds per game, but Kelly just doesn't have necessarily the same amount of height and athleticism as Archer does, and this is a Radford team that does a really nice job of pickpocketing between Brian Antoine, Keenan Giles, DeQuan Smith. You're able to get a combined about 3.5 steals per contest. Antoine gives you 11 points, shooting 42.5% from 3. Giles and Smith, they combine for about 29 points per contest, and this is a Radford team that they still do a relatively solid job of being able to guard the 3-point arc. 80th in all of college basketball with regards to opponents' 3-point shooting percentage. Charleston Southern has not been bad with regards to their 3-point shooting defense away from home. They're clocking in more in the neighborhood about 200th with this regard, and for Charleston Southern, they've actually been able to guard the arc a little bit better in a roadside-shoot court environment rather than when they have it at home. And they do have a guy in RJ Johnson who's been able to give you 13-plus points per contest. They've been able to get a little bit of ancillary production as well out of some of the ancillary guards as well. Like, you've been able to get 12.5 points per contest out of Amelon Summers, been able to give you about 34% 3-point shooting. You've been able to have some good production out of BJ Patrick, who's been able to give you 11.5 points per contest as well, but now he's out of the fold. He's going to be missing for this game. They've been dealing with injuries as well to Caleb Clinton. He just returned to the fold a few games ago. It's going to be interesting to see what you're going to be able to get out of him moving forward, as when he's been out there, he's been able to give you about 6 points, 4 boards per contest, but got a lot of injuries that are just starting to take its toll on Charleston Southern. Meanwhile, you've got someone in Chandler Turner down for what, who's able to give you about 6 rebounds per game for a Radford team that they're not quite the same defensively as they have been in past years, who are in 37th in all of college basketball in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, but you do have a Charleston Southern team that is getting completely tattooed down low and in a roadside shoot corner environment, giving up 10.8 points more per 100 possessions at home, and 345th in the country with regards to points allowed on a per possession basis. So I do think that Radford going to take it to a Charleston Southern team that has some suspectness with regards to their 3-point shooting percentage. This is a Charleston Southern team that has certainly got its work cut out for them going up against a Radford team that in regulation they have now given up 66 points for fewer in 3 of their last 5 games. So going to be taking a look at this total under, and I'm going to be willing to lay with Radford. 306.513, 306.514. North Florida plays also Lipscomb. Lipscomb is in a pick'em game with your total at a 156. Did set my total at 152. I'm going to be taking a look at the under. It is a North Florida team that, while they are outside the top 275 in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, this is a team that is also well outside the top 100 with regards to total possessions per game. This is a Lipscomb team that has been able to do a relatively solid job with regards to their interior defense, despite the fact that they don't have a lot of size. Jacob Inyesovic was really their main rebounder from a season ago. He has been missing for the entirety of the season, so it's been Will Pruitt sort of moonlighting and doing a little bit of everything for this team. He's been able to throw in there for the team right around about 6 boards. He gives you 13 points per contest. It is a Lipscomb team that's right around about 309th in the country with regards to opponents' 3-point shooting percentage. This is also a North Florida team that they themselves are going to give it up from 3-point range. Sure, in 56th in all of college basketball with regards to opponents' 3-point shooting percentage, though North Florida allows opponents to shoot only about 29% from 3-point range at home. That goes to 40% in a roadside shoot court environment. You do have Dorian James, who's been very solid for this North Florida team. He's been able to supply the team with about 10 points, 5.5 boards, and he and Chaz Lanier have been able to combine for about 46% 3-point shooting. Lanier is able to chip in there at 17 points, right around about a steal per contest. Both of these teams do have their warts with regards to the defense, but Joe Anderson on the flip side for Lipscomb has become a nice facilitator, being able to give you about 4 assists per contest. When it comes to Lipscomb, they're about 285th in all of college basketball with regards to rebound rate. North Florida, they are right there at 323rd in all of college basketball, so there should be a lot of second and third chances to be had, but this is a North Florida team that they're just not playing with a lot of tempo, which is why they've been able to hold teams down just a little bit more recently. I'm not saying that this defense has been amazing by any stretch of the imagination, but they've now given up 75 points or fewer in 6 out of their last 7 games. It is a Lipscomb team that they themselves have been getting tattooed quite a bit recently. They have given up at least 77 in 4 of their last 5 games, but this is a Lipscomb team that does have Darren Boyd, who's able to give you 17 points per contest. I do think that with Owen McCormick and his versatility at 6'9", 9.5 points, 5 boards, shooting 38.5% from 3-point range, they are going to take it to a North Florida team that has had a tough time being able to guard the arc. I just think that you come up a little bit short in terms of the amount of possessions needed for and over. It's a Lipscomb team that they play a little bit faster, but it's not like they necessarily play at warp speed, so I do think that there's going to be a little bit of regression with both of these offenses from the outside. I think that there's going to be a slowed down game that in the end, Lipscomb is going to be able to execute better in. I did set Lipscomb as a 2-point favorite. Looking at them, I'll write on the money line. Maybe I throw a 152, so also looking under 306, 515, 306, 516. Austin P. It's a road face off against Jacksonville. Jacksonville finds themselves as a 2 to 1.5 point underdog. Total on this game, it is anywhere between 139.5 and 140, and I did set my total at 139.5. Now that we're getting to a 140, looking at the under, Austin P outside the top 3 with regards to total possessions per game, and Austin P has done a really good job of being able to guard the arc. A top 65 team with regards to opponent's 3-point shooting percentage. You look at Austin P in terms of their points allowed on a per possession basis, and this has been one of the best defenses out there in this conference. It's only 239th in the country with this regard, but considering that Jacksonville is outside the top 275 in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, it's marked improvement there. And for Jacksonville, they have to deal with quite a few injuries, so as a result, it's been a lot of Marcus Nyblack to lead the way for the team. 11.5 points, 4 boards, 3 assists, but now he's dealing with a little bit of an injury. Went down on Thursday in that game against Eastern Kentucky, was not seen over the weekend, so that's a big issue. You've got Robert McCray, who's been able to headline the scoring for the team, 17 points, steal and a half per contest for a Jacksonville team that turned the ball over 14.5 times per contest. They shoot 31.5% from 3-point range, and they're completely incapable of being able to guard the 3-point arc. 325th in all of college basketball to guard opponent's 3-point shooting percentage. That goes down to 28.2% at home, up to 39.7% in a roadside court environment. And they go up against an Austin P team that has DeMarcus Sharp, who among qualifying D1 players actually led the country last year with regards to 3-point shooting percentage. He has yet to make a 3 thus far this season. It's actually been Isaac Haney along with Jamonta Black, who have combined to shoot about 40% from 3-point range, but Sharp is a do-it-all player. 17.5 points, 7 boards, 5 assists. He's actually now made 1 3. He's up to 7.7% 3-point shooting percentage, as he's taking like less than 1 per game, but you've got a bunch in Austin P that, even though they don't do a tremendous job on the glass, they go up against a Jacksonville team that's only about 187th in the country with regards to rebound rate. Austin P hovering more around 277th, other than Sharp. You don't have a single guy that gives you north of 4.5 rebounds per game, but getting Haney to be able to fire on all cylinders. Jesse Jones has done a nice job helping this team protect the ball. Only about 9.1 turnovers per game for Austin P. That is a top 30 mark with regards to ball protection on all of college basketball, and it is an Austin P team that has risen up quite a bit with regards to their offense. Defense has still been solid, 73 points or fewer surrender in 3 out of their last 4 games in regulation. Meanwhile, Jacksonville really struggling with their offense ever since they had the injury to Nyblack. They have not been able to exceed 63 points in a game, so I did set my total 139.5. Looking at the under, with Austin P made them a 3.5 point favorite, so want to lay the number to go along to 140 under. 306, 517, 306, 518. It is Navy on the road facing off against Lehigh. Lehigh, an underdog of 4 to 4.5 points out on this game is between 139.5 and 140, and with Lehigh, I did set them as a favorite of 2 points, so I'm going to be willing to take the points with Navy. Keith Higgins currently out of the fold for Lehigh. That is their top scorer of north of 15 points per contest. He has been out of the fold really for much of the month of January. Meanwhile, you've got a Navy team that they're still well outside the top 200 with regards to total possessions per game. Austin Benjini has been really a good scorer for the team. 16 points, 4 assists. Doesn't necessarily shoot it well from 3-point range, but Donovan Draper gives you 2.5 steals, 9.5 boards, 10.5 points per game. He's been one of the most complete defenders in mid-major basketball this season, and this is a Navy team that they do a really good job on defense. Top 90 team in the country with regards to points allowed on a per possession basis, going against a Lehigh team that is in the top 75 with regards to total possessions per game. They're more around 187th in the country with regards to their points allowed on a per possession basis, but Navy is going to guard the heck out of the arc. Meanwhile, Lehigh they allow for a lot of open looks from three-point range. Lehigh, 328th in the country in terms of opponents' three-point shooting percentage. Navy, 43rd in the country, and that drops to 30.3% in a roadside shoot corner environment, while this Army team, they have been able to find some outside shooters. Mac McDonald has been able to give you 9 points on over 40% three-point shooting. Austin Inge, he's been able to give you about 2 assists, 6.5 points per contest, with Navy being able to find their footing on offense. And this Lehigh team, being one that is currently dealing with a whole bunch of injury. They have been up and down with regards to their offense. They have scored 71 points or fewer in 4 of their last 5 games. They have not been the same team without their main scorer in Higgins. It's been Tyler Whitney City trying to do a little bit of everything, 14.5 points per contest, and with only having one guy that's able to give you north of 4.7 rebounds per game, that'd be Don Perlin. That does leave this team in a little bit of flux there as well. Not that Navy is some sort of an amazing rebound team either. Navy is about 287th in all of college basketball, but with Lehigh not doing a great job on the glass, now having their main scorer out of the fold, I do think the Navy is going to be able to hold in there in a game that I think points are going to be at a bit more of a premium. I did set my total at a 140. Right now we're seeing some 140s with juice and 140 and a halves at a 140 and a half, looking at the under. And with Navy, we'll take the 4 to 4.5 with them. 3 of 6.519, 3 of 6.520. Lafayette plays those to American, and American is finding themselves as a underdog of a point. Total on this game is 129. Set Lafayette as a 2.5 point favorite. I'm going to be willing to lay the number. This has been absolutely ridiculous what we've seen out of Lafayette, by the way. They did not beat a D1 opponent out of conference, and here they are at 7-1 in the Patriot League. And the biggest reason why is their 7-footer Justin Vandebon. He's been able to give you 9.5 points, 5 boards, save pop threes, doesn't necessarily shoot them well for his size at 21.5%. That said, this has been a whole is greater than the sum of its parts venture for Lafayette. You've got 5 separate guys that give you at least 7.8 points per contest among their top 4 scorers. Every one of them give you at least 3.8 rebounds per game, and they go up against an American team that they've just been absolutely giving it up from three-point range. Outside the top 3 with regards to opponent's three-point shooting percentage, American 335th with regards to opponent's three-point shooting percentage, but they've got good versatility. Mark Rogers, 15 points, 6 boards at 6'9". He shoots north of 37% from three-point range, and this has been an American team that has been able to travel with regards to their offense. In terms of points scored on a per possession basis, this American team, 91st in all of college basketball. They only see a fall-off of about 7.5 points fewer per 100 possessions when they are in a road/shoot corner environment, and this is an American team that, as a whole, they're shooting 35.5% from three-point range. That does see a little bit of a fall-off, though, when they do leave home. They're only shooting about 33.5% from three-point range when they are away from home. They do go up against the Lafayette defense, so that they are allowing opponents to shoot about 33.5% from three-point range at home, 214th overall in all of college basketball with regards to opponents' three-point shooting percentage, and you've been able to get some good facilitation out of Elijah Stevens for this American team, so be able to give you 5.2 assists to 2.2 turnovers per game. But Mark Butler really being able to fortify this Lafayette team with about 8 points, 3.5 assists per contest. Does not pop it from three-point range at all, but has been able to do a nice job knifing it inside, giving the team 4+ assists in 4 of the last 5 games. I think that that's absolutely massive for this bunch, and with American really having a slow, controlled style that can lead to some volatility, I do think that Lafayette is going to be able to find a way once again to be able to get it done. I do think that this is going to be a game that comes down to a late game fouling, and I do think that for this American team that has certainly been giving up the points recently, 70+ in 2 out of their last 3 games, it's a Lafayette team that has actually gotten to at least 70 in 4 of their last 5 games. I think that this total just a shade too low. Set my total 132.5, looking over, and I'm willing to lay up to 2 with Lafayette, and we're at things up with 3 of 6.521, 3 of 6.522. Texas A&M Commerce plays those to Incarnate Word. The Word is an underdog of 4 points. So on this game, it's 140 to 140.5. Set my line at 3.5. Here out of 4, I'm going to be willing to take the points with Incarnate Word. Both of these teams having their issues with regards to defense. And for Texas A&M Commerce, this is a top 75 team in all of college basketball with regards to turnovers forced on a per possession basis. But for Texas A&M Commerce, 277th in all of college basketball in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. Incarnate Word, 300th with this regard. Both of these teams do have their issues, but Sean Robinson, who's been able to come over from Austin Peay, has been able to give you about 10 points per contest for this Incarnate Word team. Also, Sky Wicks has been able to give you 9 boards, 15+ points per contest, and now having Alex Anderson come in from Alabama State. He was a 2-time transfer that was barred from playing at the beginning part of the season. Him coming in gives the team a little bit of reinforcements as they're shooting in the mid-30s from three-point range, and they're going up against a Commerce team that has been allowing opponents to shoot 40% from three-point range at home. This is an Incarnate Word team that, while they do a lot of things less than terrific from a defensive perspective, they're about 192nd with regards to opponent's three-point shooting percentage. That falls to 33.7% in a roadside-shoot corner environment. And when it comes to this Commerce team, you've been able to have Jerome Brewer be able to give you about 14.5 points per contest. He's been the main headline scorer, but this is a Commerce team that is in the bottom 30 in all of college basketball with regards to rebound rate. You don't have a single guy in the roster that's able to give you north of 5 rebounds per game. game. You've had Kalen Williams be able to chip in there about 14.5 points per game as well, but with this Commerce team shooting 31.5% from three, having no rebounding whatsoever, going up against an Incarnate Word team that certainly they do have their turnover woes. They themselves, though, they do generate 7 turnovers per game, and for this Incarnate Word bunch, they've been able to get to at least 71 points in 3 of their last 4 games. Meanwhile, for Commerce, they have scored 68 points or fewer in each of their last 4 games as wrapped up in regulation. They had a double overtime game against Nichols that is not included in that, as they scored 65 points in regulation there. I do think that this is going to be a Word team that is going to be able to hold in there. I did sum a total of 143.5. Both of these teams are pretty ghastly with regards to their defense, and for Incarnate Word, in pretty much every one of their games, they are allowing at least 70 points, and they are scoring at least 70 points. I do think that it's going to fall more into that mold, so we'll at the over, and we'll take 4+ here with Incarnate Word, and that wraps things up for the Wednesday edition of Coast to Coast Hoops, now part of the VSiN family podcast. If you do like sharing from this fine podcast, Coast to Coast Hoops, you're able to subscribe wherever you get your podcasts: Apple Podcasts, Google Play, Spotify, Stitcher, and TuneIn. If you have a question, comment, segment idea, whatever you for this podcast, you have one of 2 ways to be able to throw those in. First one is my Twitter/X timeline at @unit_81. Keep in mind, letters EM, name does not matter, so as per usual, please do send these into the timeline. Other way is find an Apple Podcast review. If you rate this podcast 5 stars, it is very much appreciated. From there, you're able to fire in whatever you'd like to hear on this podcast via that 5-star review. Big thanks once again to Mid-Major Matt, a.k.a. Matt Josephs, for joining me in my segment, coming at you guys every single day throughout the college basketball season. That means I'll be coming at you once again tomorrow. Thank you so much for tuning in.
It's the Smucker's Uncrustables podcast with your host, Uncrustables. Okay, today's guest is rough around the edges. Please welcome Crust.
Thanks for having me.
Today's topic, he's round with soft pillowy bread.
Hey.
Filled with delicious PB&J.
Are you talking about yourself?
And you can take him anywhere.
Why'd you invite?
And we are out of time.
Are you really cutting me off?
Uncrustables are the best part of the sandwich. Sorry, Crust.
Why are there ridges on Reese's peanut butter cups? Probably so they never slip from her hands. Could you imagine? I'd lose it. Luckily, Reese's thought about that. Wonder what else they think about. Probably chocolate and peanut butter.
McCrispy strips are now at McDonald's. Tender, juicy, and its own sauce. Would you look at that? Well, you can't see it, but trust me, it looks delicious. New McCrispy strips, now at McDonald's. Ba-da-ba-ba-ba.